Good evening and welcome to the Littleton Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, July 9th, 2018. I will read through the proposed agenda and then we'll get started shortly after 6. I guess it's already after 6. First item of business, organization, Pledge of Allegiance, Reed Mail. Second, pleasant business, Police Sergeant promotion with soon-to-be ex-patrolman Mark Scola. At 6:15, Littleton Common Smart Sewer update with some funding updates as well, Keith, is that correct? Yep.
Yes.
Funding application updates. Fourth item, Board of Selectmen's goals for fiscal year 2019. Continuation of some of our earlier efforts back in June. Fifth, public input, members' updates. 7:10, item 6, Board of Selectmen's regulations and policies, a review again, a continuation item. And then beginning at 7:30, we have 5 liquor license violation hearings, which were the result of compliance checks on sales to minors. At 7:30, the first one is with Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza. At 7:50, 3Gs and J, which is doing business as Common Convenience. At 8:10, Point Hospitality, doing business as Marriott Courtyard, Boston, Littleton. When did they come up with that? 8:30, D. Japman, Inc., doing business as Masala Bay. 8:50, Common Foods, doing business as Littleton Sub Shop. At 9:10, hopefully earlier, we'll have other business, a legislative update from Keith, a number of minutes we have to approve, and that's it. So, with that, I will ask our clerk, Madam Clerk, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, great. Keith, you want to walk us through the mail?
Sure, I'll do a quick mail, but also a quick hello from Anthony, who is on vacation this week, but tweeted from Walt Disney World. We stopped by City Hall to see the mayor of Main Street to discuss municipal affairs.
Doesn't he have big ears?
Yeah, so he has a great time.
Disney World in July, and he actually, that's a legitimate smile on his face, too.
Yeah.
All right, Anthony, I love you.
And then just a couple of things in the actual mail packet. First is a reminder again about the Master Plan Implementation Committee's public forum on Littleton Common Revitalization, which will be on Tuesday, July 17th at 6:30 at the fire station conference room. And that will be, that's a facilitated meeting, is it, or?
Very much so.
Okay, very good, from Chair Mike Zeldin.
Do we know more about that same day we have the visit from Secretary Ash, or?
We just know that it's 5:30, and they haven't worked out the specifics. And what that refers to is that at 4:30 next Thursday, Secretary Jay Ash, Economic Development Secretary, will be touring IBM, and his office has invited us to go along, and he will be available at 5:30 to meet with local officials. And so who knows, maybe we'll bring him by at 6:30 in addition to pumping him about the smart sewer, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Other stuff in the packet, I didn't put it up here, but we did get a letter from the MassDOT indicating we did not get funded on our latest application for the Complete Streets program. And in fact, I got a follow-up phone call which said that because there's so many communities that are applying for it, that the Secretary is essentially not giving, if you got a grant before, you're not getting another grant until there's a lot more money put on the table by the legislature, maybe from some of the bond bills that the House and Senate are taking up. But great consolation prize, we didn't get, we've applied for, like $300,000 grants, most recently under 100. We didn't get those, but we did get a $3.6 million tip project, which was the other advice we were getting from MassDOT.
Was
Go for
the tip.
stand in
Right,
another line.
right.
and
Stand in the
go
shorter
to some-
lines,
right,
yes.
Right. So thanks to Chris Stoddard in particular for putting all
Thank you,
that
Chris.
effort into it. And we did receive approval from the Attorney General late last week for the two bylaws that were passed by this year's annual town meeting. One is a zoning amendment. Our adult use marijuana bylaw was approved, as were amendments to the demolition delay bylaw for historic structures. So both of the bylaws passed by town meeting have now been approved by the Attorney General and take effect.
We don't have anything else out there pending with the
We
AG's
don't,
office?
no, that's the list, yeah.
Okay, great.
Great,
All right. The next agenda item then, that's it for Bill. Keith?
that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, jeez.
Mr. Chair, I did get a text back from Chuck, and that was about 5 minutes ago. He said he was 10 minutes away.
Okay, good. All right. We have a police sergeant promotion to act on this evening, and I will ask Chief Pinard to walk us through that, the process, and the introductions to our nominee for that position.
Absolutely. Good evening. So tonight, I'm here to introduce Mark Scola. Mark went to St. John's, as you'll see in his resume. From St. John's, he went to Westfield State College. He double majored in political science and criminal justice. Mark started his law enforcement career in Northampton. He was there for a couple of years, and he moved on to Sherborne. And after 6 years in Sherborne, he came to work for us a couple of years ago. Mark has been a tremendous addition to us. I know it's only been with us a couple of years, but it has been great working alongside him and seeing his level head and his administrative tasks that he's actually taken on for us. I'll let Mark talk about those if you guys want to ask him about those and the firearms license and whatnot. But
What I
Mark went through
would
the-
ask you for a little, maybe a description of the process, Chief, that...
So, yeah, I'm getting there. So I put that out there as to
You
how.
settled in real quick, huh?
I did. As part of the process, we had arranged to have an assessment center. At that point in time, we were hoping to get a few more candidates. We had 2 candidates that actually applied for the sergeant's position. We had an interview process. We had 2 candidates come to us. After the interview process and 10 questions, some scenario-based questions, some administrative questions, the other officer that was involved in the process decided that it was not going to be for him at this time, and he actually dropped out of the race and wanted to focus on the position that he's in right now, which give him a lot of credit for doing that. You saw that. So we were left with Mark as our final candidate, but Mark is hands down been an absolute pleasure to work with, and has that leadership skill that we're looking for. So at that point in time, I didn't think it was a need for us to go forward with an assessment center for $5,000.
Sure.
Mark, welcome to the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you.
Have a seat.
Well, seems like only yesterday we were interviewing you. I reminded myself, looking at your resume in the September of 2016, which you're, at least in this context, a new face to a couple of our members, so
Pleasure.
please tell us about yourself, especially in the context of what you've learned about Littleton and policing while you've been here, and why you want to be a sergeant in Littleton, why you think you'll be a good sergeant.
Well, first of all, it's nice meeting you guys, the ones I haven't met before. I got in law enforcement probably about, 9.5 years ago. Got my start in the city of Northampton. It's an accredited department. Worked there for about 2 years, transferred to the town of Sherborne. It's the polar opposite of Northampton in terms of size. Tiny, tiny, small town. Tight-knit community, though. While in Sherborne, I served as the one and only firearms licensing officer for the department there. I did that for about 5 years during my tenure there. After the 6 years in Sherborne, I came here to the town of Littleton. I feel like the town of Littleton's that happy medium in terms of a balance, you know. At the big city, not the huge city like a Boston, but at city experience working in Northampton, the small town experience working in Sherborne, and it's kind of a good fit here in Littleton, where we're not huge, but we're not small either. While here in Littleton, I've had a great opportunity to work with some great officers here. Had the opportunity to serve as the department's firearms licensed officer yet again. In that role, there is a lot of responsibility, given the day and age that we live in now. And it's imperative that we follow through and make sure we're holding up to the standards that the state's setting for us, along with our accreditation standards as well.
Before I ask a couple of questions, I'll just see if board members have any questions. Obviously, there's no heat in the situation. You can be as candid as you want. We don't have too many choices here, but any board members, Cindy, was there anything you'd like to ask or talk to Mark about?
I don't really have anything specific to ask right now, but just thank you for your service and for committing yourself to Littleton. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Chase?
Just one question. What do you see as our challenges, Littleton's challenges over, let's say, the next 5 years as we grow as a town, right? You've seen the extremes, and that's what's really interesting to me
Right.
about your experience. So with Littleton sort of in the middle, where do you see our challenges as we go forward for the next 5 years?
Littleton's growing, there's no hiding that. I think in terms of law enforcement, we have a challenge across the country. If you look at the pillars of 21st century policing, I think the biggest one that stands out to me is building that trust and legitimacy within the community. I think being transparent and, open with our community, that helps us be more approachable. I feel as though we have a good relationship now, but we can always improve on that. We're getting people from the outside moving into town now as we grow, and they're getting to know us as we're getting to know them. I think that's probably one of the bigger obstacles that we're going to have to overcome, and in terms of the town growing now.
Joe?
I want to congratulate you on your double major. That's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you.
But I got to ask you, criminal justice and political science, are you preparing yourself for being in front of people like us?
Potentially. I did do political science on a law track at the time. My father, he was a mailman. My mother, Donna, she's a teacher at
You
Worcester
should have
Vote.
introduced your
Yeah.
family here.
My parents are here today.
The important
my
thing,
my wife Michelle's a nurse. We've always been committed to community service. Going into college wasn't positive what I wanted to do. My older sister, she majored in criminal justice. She's now a detective. She's actually getting made detective today in her department in Florida. The Tavares Police Department, so at least I'm one-upping her with the sergeant. Just to keep that in mind, Mom and Dad.
She wasn't at, we just saw Florida up there on the screen.
No, she's actually in that area. She's in the Orlando area, but
Wow, that's great.
not too far out. But, having that in mind, I was a little indecisive at the time, and I did the political science on a law track. So we were looking at Supreme Court cases, and I was potentially leaning towards going to law school. And then my roommate at the time, Matthew Saylor, who actually lived in Littleton, he asked me if I could give him a ride to take the Northampton's police exam. And I took the exam, and here I am today.
All right, actually, I don't have any questions for you, though I'm pleased in the short time you've been here, how you've impressed the townsfolk that you've interacted with in the department, and we hope you stay with us for a good long time.
Thank you very much.
All right. And with that, I guess, unless there's anything further, Chief, are you looking for a motion from the board on that?
I would love the board to make a motion to appoint.
All right.
Mr. Sergeant.
Wonderful. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize submission, oh, wait.
Yeah.
All right.
Number 2.
You almost got designated
Move
as
that
a
the Board
smart
of
sewer.
Selectmen, I know. Getting ahead of myself. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to promote Patrolman Mark Scola to the position of Patrol Sergeant for the Littleton Police Department.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Scola, too. You've done well. And Mrs. Scola.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Chief. Okay, Keith, Littleton Common Smart Sewer update. We have, well, Chase and I are both involved with that. The presentation is going to be made by,
We have our team here
yeah, we've got
tonight.
Chris here, we've got Kent here, we've got
Corey.
Corey here, yeah, we got Fred, we got a lot of folks here. We got Mike here. I didn't reply to you, but I thought there was at least mark signs of improvement. And we can work on it probably further still.
Yeah, I think we're working on it.
Very good.
Okay, good to see you folks again, yes?
Very good. One of the things that we were hoping to be able to do tonight is, I guess, polish our message for when Secretary Ash comes next week.
Right.
And we can help push. By way of update, our Senator Jamie Eldridge had let us know a week or so ago that there would be the opportunity for an earmark for Littleton's smart sewer project in the environmental bond bill that the Senate is going to be taking up. In fact, the Senate debate is scheduled for this Thursday. The earmark amendments are due tomorrow, and Senator Eldridge's office contacted us this afternoon to say the maximum that they can apply for is $6 million, and so we'd asked for 10, and they haven't confirmed.
That's in
what
the
number
earmark, but that doesn't preclude us from applying for stuff outside of that, does
Oh,
it?
no, not at all, no. Of many, many things that we might go for, that one, in the motion tonight, for example, we're looking to get authority to apply for MassWorks grant, which would be additional money, but that the earmark in a piece of legislation that would, without standing in line or anything, just say X millions of dollars for Littleton Smart Sewer may well be included in the package that the Senate approves this week. So next week, as I mentioned earlier, the Economic Development Secretary, Jay Ash, will be in Littleton. It will be an opportunity for us to pitch. And and since we had not updated the full board on the sewer project in a while, we thought it would be well to do. And we've got some timely things coming up, including submitting a MassWorks grant application by August 10th, and also a state revolving fund loan application, which would come up. And so
We just got word today that the PEFs are due August 24th
for the state revolving fund, okay.
Just this afternoon as well.
PEF,
Project evaluation form for basically to get SRF eligibility.
okay.
Very good.
Perhaps before we start with the PowerPoint, I'll echo what Keith indicated, that this is, at least in part, the presentation that is, how are you, Chuck? Recognition that we need to kind of smarten up our presentation, and I do want to thank you folks. Kent, I guess it was primarily your work, was it, on the?
This was Corey's.
This was Corey's, all right, well, Corey, yours, all right. I think we can, this is definitely improvement in the presentation materials. We know we're dealing with detailed, dense stuff, and we don't want to deny anybody access to that information, whether it's the financial information, or the science, or the particulars of the program and the neighborhoods affected, but there's also got to be a smart but simplified version of that we share. And, with that, why don't we just, whoever's taking the lead on this, move forward. And we can make changes to this. What, are we meeting again on Friday, are we? Is this the Friday?
When's our next team meeting? This Friday at 10?
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right,
This-
so-
Yes. this
So
Friday.
anything we get wrong here today, and we invite input, we will fine tune it on Friday for next Tuesday, correct? Okay.
And what we were trying to do here is just give a general update to the whole committee, and the latter portion of the presentation is the information that Paul, you had requested, and the kind of the talking points that we can reach to Jay Ash. So in that mind, what I've done, the first slide that we had was just an updated map of the project area, and what you can see is that we've taken out some of the.
Are we able to zero in on, focus in on that or not? If not, that's, 'cause I can see people in the audience I know are interested. Is my house in or out?
Let's see if I can zoom in.
Yeah, that helps.
We could certainly post one though. I mean, if you guys wouldn't mind to just zoom in on the, you know, right now it's larger because we've got the discharge area
Absolutely.
off to the west, but if you guys
Yeah, we could do like
tomorrow
an
would
inset map
put
of
one
that.
that's,
Absolutely. And this map is just mainly depicting the parcels that remain in. We've gotten some data from the sewer survey results where we've taken parcels out, and you can see the point is out and IBM is out. And this is just showing you, you know, where we stand now with the system that we're looking at proposing for the town of Littleton.
You want to explain the color code a little bit, Corey? Just,
sure, yeah,
since we got it up on the screen, you might as well tell people what it means.
Yeah, so phase one is, so we basically separated the project into 4 areas. The blue parcels are the parcels that would be serviced by the first project, what we're calling phase 1A. And basically, phase 1B would be out the light green parcels, Great Road area, and then we're looking at the magenta color parcels north of 495 as being 2A, and then the more of a little infill area in the 2B, the orange parcels that you see.
Does that include some of the residential areas? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely, yep. Some of the, like Jennifer, a portion of Goldsmith, and Adams and those streets there, so.
and it's correct that the time difference between 1A and 1B could be relatively small, or they could happen at the same time, but there's a meaningful gap between phase 1 and phase 2.
Yep.
A and B is small.
Yeah, in terms of the project financing, I think there's a 2-year gap between each phase of the project.
Between the 1 and the 2, but not the A's and the B's, correct?
Yeah, we can squeeze those together as close as we'd
Okay.
like, looking at funding, so. And then the next slide is just a general update on some things that we're looking to do relative to project financing. As a result of the Housing Choice program, I think there's 70 communities in the state that are eligible for reduced loan rates through the SRF program, basically allowing you to go from a 2% loan to a 1.5% loan. Littleton is one of those communities, so as a result of being eligible for that, we've updated the project cost financing to reflect that. And then basically some other things that we're looking to do, as Keith alluded to, we're looking to submit a MassWorks grant application in early August. The thought there is that we could be eligible for in excess of $2 million in grant funding for the project. So we'd be looking to get letters of support from local businesses and key project partners, you know, that we would like to engage in that regard. So we were potentially thinking Mass Ready Mix may be a partner for some reuse water.
Yeah, what was the other one we were thinking in that same part of town there? The Pepsi folks, weren't they a potential candidate as well?
Greywater?
No?
I don't think so. We were exploring, yeah, we had discussed at the last team meeting whether there was a housing authority, something else that might allow us to, you get extra points.
Okay.
From a housing project, and.
That's right, it's the housing authority, it was the ready mix, those
Yeah,
are the
and,
parts.
yeah, and part of, and the problem with the housing-related ones is that they're not all ready to go. They wouldn't be ready to go by, you know, when an application is due. That even though we're making progress on, you know, on the housing authority, that we, you know, we'll see how it goes, but.
Throw something at Chris. Right now, we've put a focus on maintaining the fields that are up at the high school. Sprinklers were on all season, great results. That's certainly something that we could,
Yes, we've run the numbers. That the full intention is to tie in the high school system to start to the reuse water.
irrigation.
For irrigation. And then the master plan would be theoretically building it out as we go, up to the middle school, irrigating fields as we go, continuing to tie them in, knowing that it's the town technically.
Two-way pipe?
Yeah. The town technically still has to pay for water, but at a much reduced rate compared to what we pay currently. But yeah, that's the plan initially, right off the bat, is to tie in the high school. So we have.
So that's one of the highest and best uses, right?
Sure.
Yeah, we use massive, this year is staggering the amount of water we've used already this year.
We have a field that.
And corporate.
Corporate.
We have, right next to the,
Right.
the soccer field
Exactly.
down there, we tie that in immediately too, so. Yeah.
And Corey, that 0.5% going away from the water, if we're doing
Sure.
that,
Yeah, thank you.
0.5% improvement in the loan rate is worth, just off the top of your head, how much in terms of project cost? $500,000, $1 million,
It's close to $1 million.
close to $1 million. Okay.
It depends on how far you stretch out the financing. It's a lot of money. Though. We're talking about borrowing $25 million.
Right, over 20 years, so you're looking at
That's a
a good
lot.
chunk of change. Okay.
So as with, the need to get letters of support from the businesses, we, use those to basically bolster our MassWorks application, because that's what you're basically trying to prove that you're creating new jobs and that there's an interest and a need. We'd also be looking to get the Mass DEP-SRF funding application submitted, like I said at the beginning. That's just came out today, the application forms, and those are due August 24th. So we'll be working on that. And Keith gave you a general update about the environmental bond bill. The one thing to note here is that the next slide gives you a depiction of capital costs that we're looking at. But at our last project meeting, we basically, are all in agreement that maintaining the vision of the quirk and the high reuse quality gives us the best options for receiving funding for the project. So we feel that you need to maintain those, not just reuse water quality, but also the anaerobic digestion pieces. So we'd be looking to potentially keep those in. Here are the costs for both options. You can see that there's about almost a $5 million differential. If you're not going with the quirk per se, that eliminates the capital costs associated with the anaerobic digester. But one thing to note here is you can see that we're counting on 70 tons per week of source-separated organics and food waste to basically bolster and fund portions of that project. But we're still looking at 150,000 gallons per day capacity for both projects, and there are approximately 423 equivalent dwelling units that would be connected to either project.
And to ground that 70 tons per week for the rest of the board, the original Smart Sewer study used 40 a day? 20 a day?
20 a week.
20 a week.
Yeah.
You sure it was 20 a week?
Yep.
Just 20 tons a
Yeah,
week?
that's what we
Okay.
were carrying until we ran this scenario.
Okay.
The challenge that came up with the financing change was.
Oh, no, that was what the original, what you guys were running, but early, I think you're
Yeah,
referencing the
I was
earlier,
referring
No,
to
the 2011 report carried the 20 a week.
20 a week. That seems.
Yeah, we
low.
chose to carry that same number forward. It's relatively non-controversial, the 20 a
Okay.
week. The 70 a week takes a little more stretching, is what we've talked about, but,
Little more work to
in theory,
find the
there's
source.
waste out there, and, we've had folks on the committee being very, very pointed with the comment that they think much more than that is doable, so that's still not the highest number we've discussed. We had talked about a number of 200 to 250 tons a week, which I think is probably a significant stretch. 70 is still a reasonable number to carry.
And
And
we
the goal of that was just, as Corey said, to defray the loss in economy of scale that we had when we lost the big users.
Yep.
So we had to jump that number up a little bit to make it affordable.
and it's part of the attractant to the environmental bond funding, if nothing else.
Correct, yep. Yeah, and what you can see with both scenarios, we're counting on, over $5 million in grant funding for this project. That does not include anything that would be included in the earmark bill that will potentially move forward. So anything above and beyond that, the numbers that will be presented will go down.
Is that model carried through the financing of anything else you're presenting here today? It's like you're not assuming that?
We're not assuming anything received from the environmental bond bill
Okay.
at this point. And the numbers that are presented on the next slide basically just give you a depiction of what a residential homeowner would be looking at.
Yeah, and by the way, as we dive in, Fred and Mike, feel free to dive in this. We're vetting this as you are, you know.
So the one,
Focus group.
yeah, if we can just back up one.
Sure, yeah, there we go.
The,
Earlier slide, yeah.
okay, you got 26 million and 21 million, so $5 million difference with and without the cork.
Yep.
How is the $6 million earmark tied directly to the cork? Or is the $6 million earmark available with the not-so-smart system that the $21 million gets us?
Keith's probably had the most direct conversations on that level.
Yeah, well, the ask, as a matter of policy, was for the Littleton Common Smart Sewer as undefined, but
Right.
it doesn't have a definition with it, but whatever the Littleton Common Smart Sewer project is what we're applying.
Well, it's smart to put a sewer system in the
Well, there's
comments,
I mean,
so
we.
by definition,
And
it's
at
a
the
smart
team level,
sewer.
we've even talked over time that there's a continuum of smart,
Right.
very
No,
smart.
I guess
enough.
my question is if it's almost a wash, if you will, because if the $6 million is tied to the $26 million project and not to the $21 million project, you're within $1 million at the end of the day, is which way you go financially. And I just didn't know whether the 6 million or some portion of the 6 million comes our way if we did the without the cork. And I'm just questioning.
One thing comes to my mind, and I'm sure there's a smarter answer at the other side of the table, is that to the extent it's a mathematical wash at that review, sure, but it also gets us into the being able to generate more revenue through the, being able to process the food waste and have that capacity for growth there and a bigger system to boot. But I don't know. Beyond that, what's the...
At this point, I personally haven't seen any numbers tied to what the revenues would be. I mean, do we generate enough electricity to light a light bulb? Or do we generate enough electricity to light the...
Well, you guys are working with hard numbers, so do you want to share? I know you don't have them in
Yeah,
the slides here.
it's a good question. I mean, so what happens with the system is because we've made the treatment plant smaller, we're gonna,
Right, that's the
we're
question.
really generating less.
Right.
We counter that by trying to bring in more truck waste, but again, one of the goals of keeping the truck waste number not the highest that we've projected is also kind of still trying to keep the solution locally focused
Right,
and not
right.
make it a regional focused solution.
No, absolutely.
In doing that, we're balancing the economics. In the end, we're gonna get a lot more out of those tipping fees than we are out of the electrical generation at the end side. Because the big issue that's gonna come up is we're gonna use a lot of the heat, we're gonna generate a lot of heat,
And use
which
it.
is energy, and it has value. We're gonna use a lot of it in the treatment process. The digestion process itself will use itself. Most of the heat we generate will have some waste heat, which we'll then use hopefully to heat the buildings. DPW and LELWD have some really large
But
buildings
again,
right there.
do you
So-
see it being able to, to heat the entire highway complex? Or is
Yeah,
it
at
some
least one
small
or
piece
two
of the
of the
highway
big buildings
complex?
we
Or-
expect to be
I
able
just
to do.
haven't heard any information back on it. That's all.
And then,
That-
and then the
that's-
number, the order of
That's a
magnitude.
good point, though. I mean, it's a calculation that's been made, and yet it hasn't been shared in the level of detail that we need it to be, so that FinCom and even this board can consider it. Those, the calculations have been made that it should be able to support at least one, perhaps that complex.
Remember, rough calculations at this point, no design has been done. No
Right.
detailed
Well,
design has been done. We're pre-detailed design, we're still in planning phase, so we're using ballpark numbers. But I will tell you that, the target isn't a large generator from the by the time we get to generating electricity, we're talking about something on the order of 100 to 200 kilowatts is what we're
Okay, so
plugging
it's-
in. Very demure number.
Right.
We hope when we do the final design, we'll generate more than that, which is the goal. But right now, we're trying to undercount the chickens a little bit to be fairly conservative in that number. And that's why we don't expect to be able to generate a large amount of electricity. But again, remember, if I say we generate 200 kilowatts of electricity, that's great when we're doing that, but we also gotta remember, we're building a plant that has blowers and pumps.
Right, right.
And the operator has to have lighting and power. So the plant itself will use up a good amount of that. It's kind of you gotta look at this kind of symbiotic situation where we're generating power, but we're also using it on the site. The beautiful part about it is if we didn't do the digestion piece of the quirk, which is really what we're talking about with the quirk discussion, we would not have that, but we'd still have those power needs. So there really is a need to recognize all of that power and energy generated, because it does have value to you. You aren't otherwise using it.
So is it possible to just, over the next couple meetings, it doesn't have to be obviously by this Friday, but over the next couple meetings, have another spreadsheet or a scenario or two that says, over the first couple of years, we expect to generate, if it's 100 kilowatt
Yeah,
hours.
I agree, and I think our goal ought to be to generate two things, and if we're moving into this world, one is a easy-to-understand slide, and then the backup document that is more detailed, that even if it's, at this point, Ken, you were quite appropriate in reminding us that we're at the pre-design stage, and that, these are estimates, and, and you're lowballing or attempting to, but that much, we need to have that much as a reference point for people to show, because if we're counting on this, and if we're attaching importance to it, it has to be defensible.
Right. And then remember that a part of our financing scenario isn't just the energy that we're going to generate, both from a heat standpoint and electric standpoint, that has value, but it also has value in the renewable energy market in the form of credits. So we've counted on alternative energy credits and renewable energy credits, which right now provide pretty good value to the town over and above the actual value of the energy generated. And those are actually factored in, for those small numbers, are currently factored into our financing plan. So they don't drive the economics, but they're factored in because they're important in the business.
If we weren't such a well-run municipal electric town, we would probably be receiving
Yeah.
much bigger benefit
Yeah,
from
your
that.
power
And one of the things that I think we've done a good job doing here in balancing is that this is a sewer treatment system first, and we're harvesting any of the extra stuff
Right.
after we've focused on our primary concept, which is the sewer treatment. We could create an enormous anaerobic digester that happens to deal with a little bit of sewage sludge,
Right.
and the economics would be very favorable, but that's
No.
contrary
not-
to our objectives.
The general rule, just to be careful that you don't get ahead of yourself with the concept of what we're doing. The general rule is you don't build a small-sized anaerobic digester, the size we're gonna build for Littleton, if your goal is to financially viably generate and sell electricity as your primary goal. We would build something else. We would probably build a small cogen. We'd build feed it with a gas line and just put in a gen set, and we'd be able to burn and convert to electricity and make money off the margin. You don't do that for the reason we're doing it. We're doing it, just like you said, Chase, this is one of the side benefits of the smart aspects of the work we're doing, because a big part of this is to further reduce the waste.
Right.
And if we don't do the digester, literally we have to haul away 4 times as much solid waste at the end of the treatment process as well. And that's got to be kind of recognized. We do talk a lot about the.
Well, you say it has to be
about
recognized.
saving
Is
truck.
is it recognized?
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's
That
in
those
there.
costs are in the downside if you don't, in the
all-
without quirk math, it's in there? But we haven't seen it.
In the town, at the last numbers we saw, at around 100 EDUs, is about $140,000 a year of running costs. Right now, we're spending $110,000 a year to take care of these buildings. So that's the delta I'm looking for. Is it going to cost the town more if we put the quirk in at the end of the day? And I think that's really the only thing that, from a financial standpoint, makes sense is to ask those questions.
Yeah, and, but at the same time, I think we should be not only anticipating those questions, but addressing them proactively. But it's like, if you buy a house, it's cheaper to not buy a house than it is to buy a house. It's cheaper to not buy a car than it is to buy, but it's certain, there are things we need to do here, and it's not just living with the current system might on a spreadsheet appear to be the cheaper option, but, I guess our challenge is to show that it's not still the smarter option for us, both environmentally and economically. And I don't know if Mike's prepared to speak to it at all, but we are hoping that the other consultants in town that are working on the Common project are focusing more on the economic growth potential of what would a Common look like with and without sewer in its future. Todd, I don't know if there's a few words you want to speak to that, because that goes directly to your question, Fred. If we can't show in math, and we may never, you'll never be able to show in math, buying a new structure is going to be, cheaper than not buying one. But if we can show that it will actually generate more revenue somewhere else, well, then hopefully there you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why you.
The only comment I make here is that the focus here seems to be strictly on the sewer itself and the economics of the sewer.
Well, it is, in this meeting, yes. Yeah.
And I just want to ask the question, it's more of a question, and that is that if you just go up slightly, okay, I'm just wondering, are there funds available where you're doing not just the sewer, but you are developing the common? In other words, I'm opening up the doors, I'm just asking, this is not a proposal, this is an ask. Are there funds available either from the feds or from the state that focus on the development of the common? The reason I'm asking this is because we've gone through the first steps of taking a look at what may be, shall we say, commercially viable. By commercial, I don't mean manufacturing, heavy manufacturing or heavy retail or big box. I mean something scaled to Littleton.
Well, I hope that your consultants will tell us the answer to that question.
Well, we've taken the first steps of doing that. What I'm interested in asking the question, is there, shall we say, an opportunity for the town to apply for funds that do development of the common? In other words, the entire package, that, yes, the sewer's part of it, the other piece is all the other infrastructure that goes along with it. And I'm just asking, I guess, questions directed to Keith or any other experienced person here, because every other town I've visited that's done this kind of thing has done it as a development of a particular part or region. Yes, a sewer or other infrastructure, including electrification, you name it, is there. But it's part of something else.
Well, that's what we are doing, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm asking
there's,
the-
well,
the
there's
question.
any number of grant opportunities out there which we may or may not qualify for. The typical one that communities, especially cities, might go after, community development block grants. If they're not an entitlement community and have to apply competitively, a CDBG grant is something that you can get from the feds that you can do an awful lot. Littleton doesn't have the low mod income that would qualify us for such a project, except on something that were targeted to, age, seniors only, or something. But as far as like redeveloping our downtown, I think it would be a combination of grants, which we've identified going after federal EDA grants as well as the state. The MassWorks grant program, which is the preeminent jobs-related program that the state has for grant funding, there were once a whole bunch of separate ones, and you had to stand in line, separate lines, go for a PWAG, go for a CDAG, go for this, that. Now they're all MassWorks. Now they're all under one shop, and the test is how many jobs you're going to create. So whether it's sewer, whether it's if the issue were somehow roadway improvements, which we did on the other side of the highway, those are possibilities. But right now we're focusing on economic development through the sewer.
Right, and let me just I'll try to get back on track. Corey can resume it, but look, specific to the sewer project, we're aware of all the programs that are relevant. We're applying for all of them, and in addition to that, we're in the fortunate situation that we hope within a couple of weeks' time we'll have an earmark for about $6 million, which is kind of generic in its written form so far anyway. Beyond that, I think it would take some direction from Master Plan Committee about what specific projects we ought to be tying the sewer to go on advance. It's not gonna halt this project, that's gonna be a, phase 2, phase 3 down the road. In the interim, I know that one of the goals of the current consultant group that's working with the MPIC right now is to identify the potential in terms of economic growth of what different forms of development with and without sewer might have. And I don't know if you get much, Mike, I was hoping you might be able to give a little on that in terms of what they hope to accomplish in terms of giving us an update and some estimates.
Actually, on the 17th, I believe it is.
Yeah.
We're having the, shall we say, the first reveal of the 4 options for the common. And one of them is, 2 of them at least, if not all, 3 include the assumption of a sewer with different kinds of, shall we say, we count in terms of zoning, but really, what it really has to do is how best to use the, shall we say, the space created by having a sewer system, something we can't even talk about at the moment. That is, there is no opportunity to do that.
But as part of pursuing those 4
It's-
options,
yes.
getting some estimates of what that may yield.
That is
part of
correct.
it,
In
yes.
other words, what commercial opportunities would exist for the common as given Littleton's particular position.
And how that might affect valuation.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
So
Yeah.
hopefully it's all
And
good.
even from, and that, just as you're describing that project, the timing seems really great, because we're not in the design phase yet for the sewer. So if there are conceptual, if there are concepts of what the vision should be for the future, we have the opportunity to then carry those out in a design phase for.
Well, the
sewer.
nice thing about this exercise is designed to stimulate, and we have reason to believe that some property owners are already so stimulated to take a fresh look at their property. And I think some of the designs they may in fact adopt. So that's the idea, that we're hoping to stimulate that. I do know there's 1 or 2 that have a strong interest in it. Now, it doesn't, I can't give you numbers on
Okay.
how many new will be in.
Fair enough, I just wanted you to corroborate that is part of the ongoing efforts of
Just,
your folks.
Paul, just to circle it back though, remember that we are directly attacking, encouraging the ability for folks to get a higher and better use out of their property, because the single most limiting factor in properties like the ones in the common on development isn't lack of interest in development or lack of people thinking Littleton's a great place to build a nice project or, any of those things. It's not a lack of even development money out there. It's that those properties can't support themselves on Title V systems. So we're attacking this with an infrastructure approach, and this is the right first step to put that fund into. There is a later step potentially, Mike, where you might want to seek a partner to do a specific development, but none of that is really even very viable until we get to the point where you can offer some infrastructure to support that development.
With that, Corey.
So the table here is just giving an updated recapitulation of costs for a typical homeowner, 1 EDU, approximately 330 gallons per day. It's $22,500 betterment, annual payments of about $1,400, a sewer connection fee of $1,500, and annual user charges of just under $1,300, with an on-lot cost of 5 to 8. So it's just a general depiction of the numbers, and that takes into account the 1.5% financing, and the numbers are comparable for both capital cost scenarios that we showed you on the slide before. So.
And as far as grounding these relative, we've seen a version of this slide 3 or 4 times now. Could you give us some context using the 1 EDU scenario? How are these numbers compared to what we saw, let's say,
Like,
3 months?
So the betterment is the same. We've decided our goal was to hold the betterment.
Yep.
So we've held the betterment at the 22.5. That means the annual payment is fairly similar. It changes a little bit because the amount of cost we finance over time gets a little bit of a change based on how that goes. But the connection fee is the same. The user charges are pretty close right now. Really what happened is some of these jumped up a lot because of economy of scale loss.
Just for the audience, when you say the same, you're talking about the same in this iteration
What we
as to the earlier ones, which presume that IBM was gonna be a
Yep.
part of it.
Yeah,
right?
the big
Okay.
version, the
Yeah,
300,000 gallon bigger version. These are actually now a little bit more, just slightly more affordable on the user charge side because of that one, mostly because of that 1.5% financing. Now, the good news is if we do get earmark funding, as Corey said, that's not factored into these numbers yet, so my expectation is the first place that will have an effect is the user charges will probably be drawn back down a little bit lower first rather than the betterment, because the betterment is already falsely depressed in order to keep that betterment amount accessible and not really create a hardship for any properties. So what I think you'll see is that $1,290 per year, or if you're 2 units, $2,500 per year, that number would go down as we get more earmark. So,
Then the next slide is the talking points that Kent put together after our last meeting, so Kent.
So the hope when we did this was that if you get a chance to be stuck in an elevator with someone for a couple of minutes and you need to give them the spiel, that you'd have a copy of this folded up in your pocket. Or at least have committed this to memory. But the goal of this was to give everybody kind of a really quick hit. You know, what is the project? What are the project components about? How much will the project cost? How do we foresee the project being funded and paid for? In the end, who pays the bills, basically? And then the big one is the project benefits. And the one that offers the most room for wiggle room for us is the project schedule. And, you know, at this point, project schedule is probably the most subjective thing for you folks to decide, because at some point in time, we're gonna have to go back in front of town meeting and decide you're gonna move forward. We do think it's timely because of the opportunities right now to apply for MassWorks funding, to apply for SRF funding, and because the environmental bond bill is out there and is now gonna have an earmark for Littleton. We're getting very close to the time to move forward with, do you wanna design and build the project or not? So,
I know Mike wants to jump in, but I wanted to suggest one other item too, that within the project description, what's being settled on now, and this is the revision, you know, that prompted our moving the article from the spring to the fall, was to the scaled down map of the current 230 properties. 2 points, and I'm presenting these as my understanding, and I want to see whether or not I'm correct or incorrect on that, is that properties on the fringes, if they were in earlier iterations of the map, wouldn't be difficult to include or to absorb them into the plan, and then also that toward a cap at a certain point under this revised scale-down system, that we would still be able to absorb a bigger phase of some level of usage down the road if this sparks interest in some of the areas that are currently not interested. Could you speak to that a little bit, and maybe we ought to include some language here, because I know there's people that are not in it that.
So the model that we set up was that eventually we still have the capacity, we believe, to get upwards of 300,000 gallons a day of capacity in the system.
Even in this system.
And potentially maybe even a little bit more if you really wanted that, but you can't afford to build it if you don't have folks who are gonna be committed parts of the system.
Right.
The model we set up was to try to make this as affordable as we can for those folks who opt in at the beginning of the process, but not preclude important aspects being added later. For instance, if one of the big users, say the IBM property changed hands and somebody wanted in, we could offer them a potential. The difference is, what we've said is it would likely cost more.
Right.
And
I actually
it
had
wouldn't cost more because
more
it
in
would
mind,
actually-
some of the residences that were on the fringes that might not be.
Right.
in here.
Same for the residences. I think if we had to go, for instance, into, another one of the streets a little further down, folks changed their mind, they started having Title V problems. Those types of things. Adding a few residences is relatively easy because it's low flow. The challenge is, we still have to recognize that the initial financials here are set up to make it as affordable for the first phases we can.
So let's say hypothetically, 20 years from now, IBM says, hey, you know what, we made a mistake, we'd really like to come on board. At that point, they're paying full freight, right? It's not.
Yeah, they would pay their fairly apportioned share. So, like I said, the betterment right now is not the total cost divided by the number of units, it's less. So what would happen traditionally when you have somebody opt in later is you calculate their buy-in cost dividing the cost of the system needed to support them by the total flow and charge them their full pro rata cost. So we've run some quick numbers, and that 22.5 would turn into maybe something 27 or 30-ish.
Okay.
For a
And
unit.
without the benefit of the state grants that offset
Yeah.
costs and all of that too.
Essentially, right. And again, remember, these are, you've got to be a little careful when we talk dollars too. We continue to talk through dollars for consistency. We're using one set of dollars. These are really still 2018 dollars. So as we move these phases out into the future, phase costs will increment a little bit, time value of money and cost of living adjustments will have to kind of come into play. Consumer price index is typically used to adjust that, or engineering news record construction cost indices, which is what we use more. So, but big picture, we're trying to get people comfortable with the numbers and not have the numbers changing all over the place. You know, I don't know what the CPI will be next year, but if you applied that, it's kind of, it gets pointless to kind of continue to track it right now until we get to a project. That's one of the keys for trying to get to town meeting, is then we'll know the schedule. Right. You can set the prices a little harder with maybe a third decimal place.
Mike, you had something?
Yes, I'm just curious, maybe you already covered it, but are the commercial costs and rates that you show, they're not here, commercial?
So the commercial, what we did, the calc we did before, we actually had a second slide for this for commercial units, but what we actually found when we did that was that the average commercial, not the average, the modal commercial unit, the one that occurs the most, was about 2 units, 2 EDUs. So the most common commercial unit would be that 2 EDU number. Pretty simple.
We're now.
For existing commercial use, Mike, is the key. What we have to remember is that somebody takes the vision that someone has a small business, few people work there, it's very likely right now their parcel might be assessed at 1 unit to start. But then they realize one of those visions that you have, and they bring in a small, coffee shop and a bookstore and something, a little dry goods store in there. Now their physical usage goes up. They're going to have to pay another fee to increase that usage when they get to that point. So it's very hard for commercial to hang your hat on the EDU calculation, because we can only do it right now. We can't do it for what we think they're going to be doing in the future. So there's a method, financially, tested method for doing that, which is, and that's one of the reasons we use the EDU system, because if someone takes a property that is, 1,000 square foot commercial building, and in 3 years after we build the system, they make it a 4,000 square foot commercial building, we know by the state Title V regulations that we will link the bylaws and the payments to how to calculate the additional flow, and therefore how to calculate how many additional EDUs that property will generate, and charge them then equivalently for that. So there's a good set of systems in
So the
place.
revenue would be raised with increases in increased flow, but probably more pronounced in the tax revenue.
Yeah, and right now,
Property tax revenue.
we've built that in, and I think you've said in a couple of meetings, we talked about, Mike, but for general purposes, we've built that kind of growth over time into the model as well. Right now, we've estimated about 60 EDUs over the course of the 20-year period that would occur from that redevelopment work, which is pretty good. It's the equivalent of 3 houses a year worth of commercial flow strictly that would occur.
Okay, I know Selectman DeCoste had a question too.
Just a quick question relative to the slide, the summary, the one page. Appreciate you putting that together. I think if being the new appointee to the Economic Development Committee, I think that maybe that group could take that and make that sexier, so that the slide after this, Keith, you pop that one up where you have how a quirk works. Just that.
We're in this meta world where we want to kind of combine the information here with the
Right.
graphics here, yes.
So the first thing I want to do is, by the way, is this was, when I generated this, I tried to actually capture the source, but it didn't make it through on the slide you got. This is actually Charles River Watershed Association. This was provided by Bob Zimmerman.
Okay.
And the Charles River Watershed Association, that's a graphic that they put together specifically for the quirk, and it was run off of the last version.
But that's the way we want to present all our information.
But we
Yeah, and then-
did talk about creating a visual graphic that would support this.
So, I mean, I could see us using that with, and have that be, even if it's a trifold. So that is the entire outside of the trifold, and then the inside 3 folds, we have all the
This, I think I sent this along, or Keith did or whatever. When this popped into our inbox, I don't know, a few months ago, I said, bingo, here's where I'm actually looking at this sort of data, and I'm not going to
Easy
sleep.
to understand.
Yeah, easy to understand.
Right.
We've got to try to get
Yeah,
it here more.
495 partnership,
Yeah.
Suburban Edge Commission
Right.
produced.
So if we have to spend more outside money to do that, then
it's
I'll pass the
worthwhile.
hat. We have to get it done that way.
I mean, say what you will about the big dig, but there was a piece that was put out very early on in that project that really laid it all out so people,
I remember that.
if they paid attention to
Yeah,
it. Whoa,
yeah, it was in color and it was
Yeah, it was-
Sunday.
it was very-
Sunday funnies, yeah. It was,
Yeah,
it was
ended up-
graphic, yeah, I remember.
Stayed there for a long time. Visionaries.
I thought this was wow, yeah.
It was an easy way to understand it.
Well,
I think
that'll
using the
be
graphics.
topic A of our discussion on Friday, and we welcome everybody who's been participating here, has been helping us with the next version of this, but you want to move forward? I think we're close to the end of this
So Keith,
presentation.
do you need anything formal on the applications? I think we're good, right?
Yeah, we want to have a motion, which I will put back up here to get a vote,
Authorize submission of
the
applications.
authorized submission. There.
I have a question, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
sure, I'm sorry, I
Before we
didn't
go
mean to
a
preclude
motion.
anything, yes.
Sorry, no, that's okay.
No, Cindy, my apologies.
No worries. So I was just looking at the user zone here, that I'm just trying to focus in and see, I see we have Adams Street, we have going up towards Goldsmith Street, part of Jennifer Street. How many residents within that zone have committed themselves or expressed interest in
So
tying into the system?
What those zones are right now is we've actually, you'll see there's some properties that are like blanked out. You see it best probably in the purple. The
Okay.
magenta up on the top. See how there's some holes in there?
Yeah,
We've actually taken the folks who filled out the questionnaire and said they were not interested, that they opted out. We've taken them out of the system.
okay,
So they're already out, and what we did on those side streets is we tried to pick a spot in the street where the next couple of properties weren't interested, and we just truncated the street there for the
Okay.
sake of discussion. So what we didn't do is we didn't take out anybody who did not say they wanted to be out. So anybody that said they want to be in, and we're not beyond the zone. So to say, I don't know, Corey, 3 or 4 properties maybe at the end of Goldsmith that we're kind of interested in being
Okay.
in, but we have to pass a half dozen properties that wanted to be out.
so you included the
there.
half dozen you have to pass?
Right.
Right.
So we left out
I
people
think those
that
are
wanted
very
to be
relevant questions, the faces I'm seeing here. How far down Goldsmith are we going
out. And
here?
unfortunately, with a project like this, we
And
don't have the
Adams Street.
financial capability of running 700 or 800 feet of pipe past houses that are saying they don't want to be in.
All right.
We
But in
get
the
to a couple
proposed
of
map,
properties that wanna be.
Adams Street, for instance, is in its entirety is in, correct?
Well, no, about
half of it.
2/3
Half
of
of it.
Adams. 2/3 of Adams is in.
Okay, so
go to
within
Kurt's
that
house?
2/3, how many people have committed?
Hey, all politics is local.
Do we
This is-
know?
The residential commitment, Chris, I don't know the numbers.
On
The
Adams
residential
Street?
commitment on a percentage was really low. It was
Yeah,
probably
It's very low.
3 or 4 maybe on the
We
street
haven't
that said
received
yeah.
an abundance of responses from Adams Street.
Okay.
Basically, most, if not all, of the ones on Adams Street have said they do not want it.
Right.
Like,
The
there's-
check-
But is there more non-respondents or more?
There's more
Yes.
non-responders.
Many more
than-
non-responders.
Okay.
Yes.
But the
On the
reason we tried to
residential side
keep,
of it.
the second reason we tried to keep Adams, and again, we didn't keep anybody.
And that
who
information,
said
by the
they
way,
wanted
if
to
someone
be out.
wants to pursue,
Right.
We have,
not, it's publicly available.
absolutely,
You know,
everything, yeah,
But
it's all
the-
public. We have
But
maps.
the
of
key
who
reason
has
we wanted to
responded.
keep Adams in was because Adams has markedly smaller lot sizes than the
Right.
other streets. Even Goldsmith, Adams has markedly smaller lot sizes than Goldsmith.
Right,
And I think the challenge is for someone on Adams to try to redo a septic system without really impacting their lot is really hard. And a lot of those folks just aren't seeing it because their system hasn't failed or they haven't gotten to the point of really thinking
well, I'm
about
just
it.
curious to see how many systems on Adams Street need to be updated, that already have been done so. There's been a lot of homes that have sold on that street recently, in the past 5 years, so that's the way I'm looking at Adams Street. And so for anybody, say you're at the beginning of Adams Street and the first 3 houses aren't interested, but it's gonna run by your house, is there any cost incurred if you're not tying into the system, even though it's running?
So remember, right now,
By your
our
house.
model is the opt-outs are out.
Out, they're not gonna incur.
You don't pay a cost, but
There's
you
no
don't have
stop.
any access.
For the record, the one thing that we've discussed, which it was more on commercial properties,
Commercial
because
side, right.
because it was so high, almost universal, that we were talking about making it universal, but on the residential, if you want out, you're out.
You're out, you're out.
Yeah,
Okay,
Making
so,
the commercial almost a no, you can't opt out.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But residential, you can opt out.
Right, and so in the summary, it says 230 properties. Are those figures, the figures on the anticipated cost slide, based on 230 properties? They are, okay, but we don't know for sure that we have 230 properties.
No, I mean, we have pretty good
Do.
count on the properties and a pretty good count on the existing EDU count. So if you notice that, Corey, you presented a number in here, 423 EDUs for 230. What that means is mostly the commercial, the town, and some of the multifamily drive that average up. So
Okay.
it's coming up to something like 2 EDUs per
Right.
parcel.
I guess I'm just trying to.
They're all in there, though, they're all in there.
Right, but I'm just trying to, who's committed, is, I guess, my question.
Well, I mean, strictly speaking, right now, no one
No one
is,
is.
no one is,
Contract, yeah.
right, anyone who
Okay.
sent in a survey that said, no, thank you, the door's not closed.
No.
You know, it's.
Right,
We're, at the time of the survey, we're trying to understand generally what are we looking at as these things get tightened up. Frankly, after town meeting, after all of this happens.
Right.
That, once we get the legal agreements in place and understand what they look like, once we identify what the deferral periods are. You know, if someone lives on Adams Street and just put in a new septic, we've kicked around the idea of some amount of deferral time that they could still then buy into the system, pick a number,
Within, like,
5
10
years
years,
later, 10
right?
years later. So all of those things are still very much in
right, right. Right.
and I mean, personally, I think a lot of commitment what we've seen in the surveys is the baseline of commitment. That is that I only expect it to go higher. Anyone who has said, yes, I want
I
this.
find it hard to
Right.
believe they'll change their mind.
Right, anyone who has said yes, I have a hard time seeing them going to no.
Right.
Because they were looking at hard numbers when they had to say yes.
Hard numbers,
Okay.
hard and conservative numbers. But then I think once we actually bring this online, we're gonna be looking at a lot of people going, oh, actually, you know, they brought in $12 million worth of state funding. Now my user fee drops from $1,200 a year to $800 a year. That sounds
And we'll
nicer
be
to
able to
me.
show that.
You know,
Okay.
or we were able to give them concrete information on what the deferral looks like, and they go, oh, you know, actually, 10 years from now, I really am gonna wanna replace this, and
Right.
then we bring them on board.
Right. So that answered my question. So I really think the drive to get this information out to the public needs to be vamped up a little bit. I love the idea of incorporating the two documents.
Right.
Like you just said, but a lot of people, even though they know this project's going on, they're aware of it, they're not paying attention. They're not,
I've anecdotally, I think, shared with most of you that I've had a couple of conversations with people that showed up at our meetings, and then, both in each case, one was a King Street resident, one was a Goldsmith Street resident. After 15 minutes of talking with them, misconceptions were addressed, and they understood it, and they went
Right,
away.
right.
But there was a lot that even after, attending our meetings, it wasn't getting through accurately. So and I take that as, that burden's on us. We
Right.
gotta do a better job of getting the message
Right.
and the details out.
yeah.
Yeah, marketing.
Can I speak?
I'll open up to the public and everybody's fine? Yep, cool.
Yeah, thanks.
So my name's Kurt Landforst. I actually live on Adams Street.
Yes.
And I have, so I can say, I'm fortunate enough to live on the side of the street, I'm behind one of the banks there, and I have a big enough lot.
That doesn't
that I-
really
I could-
narrow it down. but-
Yeah, I'm right behind, across from Subway, behind that bank.
Okay.
And I've got a fair amount of space in my lot, so I could put in a septic system, but it would still be, I'm guessing, 40 grand, And the people on the other side of the street, they have to build those multi-tier active systems up. And I know that a lot of those have been done within the last, 15 to 20 years. And so those people that paid that money, would probably be a little bit, looking at those figures, would probably say, boy, I like, I don't know if I want to pay that much right now. And I wonder if, is there a way to help, like with that initial investment, to somehow, instead of having like a $25,000 outlay, if there could be like a $10,000 outlay in some kind of financing.
Well, to your point, that actually is part of the plan. So Keith, if you can put back the table real quick with the costs.
Yeah, see, even that's not
Yeah,
very well explained.
there's actually a plan in there to annualize those costs over 20 years. So you see the betterment of 22.5.
Oh, that's what that is?
Yeah.
Right, 22.5 would be the betterment,
Yeah, okay,
the annual
okay.
payment, and what we've done is we're trying to leverage the town's ability to borrow at a low rate to allow people to, rather than cough up 22.5 for the betterment, to pay that over
Okay,
20
all right.
years on our interest.
Yeah, thank you, so I didn't understand that. And, but I also wanted to say, I want to say thank you, all of you, for
Consultant.
Thank you, all of you, for doing this. Like, I've lived down near the Common for 25 years, and like, I saw a coffee shop come and go because they couldn't serve a little bit of food because they can't have she didn't have a septic system for it, and I just think that, this is really, really good for the town common to kind of make it a better place, a place where people can come down and walk around, and go to restaurants, and it would be good for the residents that, certainly that live in the area. So thank you for putting the investment into, your time investment to do it. And thanks, Chuck, for sending me the text today. I was pestering Chuck about this a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, he told me there was,
And that brings to mind that when we built this trifold, we should have some select quotes
Yes,
from residents.
Kurt, can we use that?
well, and the other thing is, this can be neighbor to neighbor, because, Adams Street is not, as we've heard, responded in large measure. And if you know of neighbors who probably would benefit,
If
we
had
need,
a little trifold like that, I'll walk up and down the street. I mean, I've talked to.
Well, also, we can get you the information. It's not, at this point, it's very public who's responded to the surveys of who's intended. I mean, we don't want you to go out and harass anybody, but if somebody hasn't responded and you know who they are, it's like, hey, can I,
Maybe Kurt and I can host a little something down at the pub and,
right,
just information night.
right.
I'll sign up for that.
Okay, we are running way over on time, but other residents, I know you're Goldsmith Street, you're wondering how far up Goldsmith, not looking good at this point, unfortunately, on that map, as you can see.
But the people down Goldsmiths around to the lake and Shakeland could very much do.
They would benefit from it, but within that area, on the map anyway, they've all been asked multiple times, or a couple of times anyways,
Up to where Adam Street.
up to Adams and Conant, yeah.
Conant, up to there is where we.
And your house is just a few beyond that, but even before that, the people there were not showing any interest yet, so it's tough to justify going farther up the road yet.
We do
I
see,
know it'll happen. When it'll happen, who knows? But once they see it working for their neighbors, everybody's gonna want in. That's how it's gonna work. It's just a question of when.
But I have to make a decision before
Yeah.
September because my auto engineer and all that stuff plans, I guess, expires in September. Because mine's gonna be 50 to 60,000 at least. Because I need $10,000 worth of dirt. So I'm trying to find out
we
what
give her
to
a good price?
do. I don't know where to let
not
it
very
go.
There's a lot of mounted systems out. If you drive down further on Goldsmith or down around the lake, there's mounted systems everywhere.
Right.
So that's what you have to do, and it's very pricey to build them. 50 to 60 is not unusual for a mounted system.
All right. Well, we can do a better job of recruiting. We can also do a better job of presenting our information. We're fine tuning that now. This was a good exercise tonight, but we'll get together with the working group on Friday and try to take this to the next step. And over the next couple of months, if our efforts are real successful, then maybe the map will expand. But I can't promise you that at this point. Don't know when it's going to happen for a property like yours. Sorry. Okay, folks, if we don't have any other input, yeah, we would be looking for
Sure.
motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize submission of applications for the Littleton Commons Smart Sewer Project to the MassWorks Grant and State Revolving Fund loan programs.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
can someone other than Joe?
I second.
Okay.
Then the motion's been made and seconded with one abstention. All right, all those in favor? Aye, aye. Okay, ayes have it. Abstention noted. Right, you did abstain?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
That's why we haven't
I
heard from Joe.
kept myself quiet the whole time that I said that.
This is going to be remarkable how quickly we pick up time here, because I'm going to say, the next, huh?
We're gonna leave and start.
Yes,
picking up
thank you very
all
much.
for your review.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
The next agenda item is the Board of Selectmen goals for fiscal year 2019. We did have a pretty full discussion. Chase wasn't able to join us for that meeting, but I do, and then Cindy had sent in material which unfortunately were not incorporated here, but Keith, you did follow up on that.
I followed it up with Cindy's, and I will follow it up with Chase's next. to get
Having
it
read
combined.
both of those, I think they're not contradictory to anything else that's said. After enough will detail each of your own particular focus points. I don't know. Let's just limit the comment right now to Keith's draft, absent those two omissions. Is everyone okay with it, or any particular points? I mean, I was fine with it. I like it.
I don't think that I don't think that there were any
Nothing left,
goals.
no, that's a key
There was
thing, yeah.
nothing, there was no goal that a selectman was proposing that wasn't captured in.
With the exception of you two
Well,
folks.
even, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mean to speak for Cindy, but even mine fall broadly under
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
sets of umbrellas.
Right.
And then, to the extent maybe we fine tune one or something like that, or add a.
So, if they'll, I'm gonna suggest then that maybe, Keith just send us a version that incorporates the two of those. I don't know, it'd be too soon to have a public hearing on the 23rd, or whether we should just review a copy of it then and then schedule a public hearing?
Well, I'd
What's your
say-
thought?
We didn't actually have a public hearing last year.
Yeah.
But you had one in prior years, so I would say, but it was similar. You'd had it on several agendas, and by the time you actually adopted it, it was almost anticlimactic.
Right.
So I'd say if you schedule it for an agenda, if you announce tonight that you're going to vote on the 23rd of July to adopt goals, and we have this, I would suggest that we include this, and I'll update the working document, the matrix. Then you could then you could just vote to do it.
Okay.
And you will have seen the final matrix that incorporates.
The only
all-
leap of faith here is where we're assuming that the incorporation of Cindy and Chase's goals will jibe and everybody's okay with it, which I don't have a problem
Yeah,
with.
I read through, I put Cindy's in, they all fit into the categories that you'd
Yeah.
already identified. I read through Chase's, and while I didn't cut and paste them into each one, I didn't see.
Well, how about
one
if
that
we
didn't,
circulate the one that involves Chase's prior to setting the agenda for the 23rd,
Sure,
but assuming
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
unless
Keith's already
Yeah.
circulated those.
Yeah.
Okay, well, unless anybody has any objection, then we'll go for a vote on the 23rd on that. You and Payne, my friend?
No.
Okay. I know the look you are. I have to.
Saying a prayer.
Yeah.
All right, then, are we okay with that topic now?
That's
Yeah.
That sounds good.
And I will make this comment, it's an ambitious agenda, but ambitious agendas have served us well in the past. Moving that along to public input members' updates. For any topic that's not on our agenda or otherwise, public input, hearing none, members' updates, Cindy.
Just quickly, I just wanted to mention Girl Scout Troop 66292 that came to see us. They ended up collecting 16 donations to send 16 military care packages. Was over 100 pounds of goods to military personnel serving in Turkey, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates and Africa. And they also included handmade cards and drawings from students from Littleton. So I just wanted to say thank you to them for taking the initiative to bring that together and support our local military. And I also wanted to remind everyone that next Monday, July 16th at 6 o'clock, right here in room 103, District Attorney Marian Ryan is going to be speaking about the opioid crisis. She arranged that through Elder and Human Services, so the public is welcome to attend that forum, and I hope that people come out and meet with her at 6 o'clock next Monday.
But she's terrific. Chase?
Just one event coming up this week that I wanted to note for the public, the Littleton Community Farm, who provides a remarkable amount of fresh fruits and vegetables to loaves and fishes in particular, but a lot of folks in our community who need their support, is hosting a couple events on Thursday. Bugs at the Farm from 5 to 6 for the little ones, and then from 6 to 8, a picnic at the farm. So please take a look at your schedules and go support them and their mission if your schedule allows it. It looks like it should be a nice night for a picnic then.
Very good. Chuck?
Nothing, thank you.
Joe?
Just two things. third Thursday this month will be July 19th at Fay Park. And something I want to mention that's overlooked a lot, the things that we have in town that people don't pay attention to, is the Cannon Theater that's right on the common
Yeah.
in the Mill Building. They're putting on plays periodically during the whole year. This coming up in July, they have Sherlock Holmes, The Final Adventure. It's on the 13th and 14th, the 20th and the 21st, and they have matinees on 2 days also. But it's something that gets overlooked. It's a treasure that we have in town.
Thank you. The only thing I'd like to share is, with sadness, the passing of a great little Tony today, Art Silva, who taught for countless decades in the Littleton school system as a gym teacher at the middle school and a real pioneer in women's sports, coach for decades of field hockey, basketball, you name it. And chances are, if you ever learned archery in the town of Littleton, you learned it from Art. And the family was dedicated through 3 generations that I know about through education. His wife ran the daycare, or as we called it, that kindergarten.
Evergreen Acres.
Yeah, Evergreen Acres. His daughter and granddaughter have followed him into education paths as well. But Art Silva was very actively involved with the senior programs as recently as a week or two ago. And never saw him when he didn't have an upbeat attitude and a positive message for people. Great person.
It really was.
Okay. Anything else? Now we're up to Board of Selectmen's regulations and policies review. Okay, I did note, Keith, that you have, or I guess what, Anthony had walked you through some of the...
Yeah, Anthony had compiled, had reached out to many of the departments who, for input on all of the regulations and policies of the selectmen, and had received some specific proposals. What we did not include is in that report are pages and pages of proposed edits.
Okay.
Which in some cases we have, and it's, but we didn't want to give you a 200-page
Right.
red line version.
But at the same token, about 200 pages do need to be reviewed for just update.
Right,
updating.
right, they do. So we thought as a starting point to give a summary, for example, I recommended that certain, there's an old town provision of town administrator personnel rules, which are entirely, whatever it says, which was adopted decades ago, is entirely surpassed by the personnel bylaw that was adopted, 10, 15 years ago.
Well, do you want to defer to Anthony on making this presentation, or would you feel okay walking us through these just to give us a flavor of it, or?
I can.
I don't think we're going to get
No, I
terribly
would
far
say-
tonight on it.
Yeah, and since we've got just like 4 minutes before the first hearing, I will defer to Anthony if you want to do that at the next meeting, or at a future meeting, depending upon what the schedule looks like. We can do that. But it was also designed with the knowledge that you've got a subcommittee, you've got
Well, Chuck and I,
you've got your working group of your, and we wanted to have a tool as an initial pass going through the entire 200-page document. Here's a list of the sorts of things that we're.
So this isn't even complete, this is just kind of
This is
a
input
selection.
from, this is an input from staff, essentially.
Right.
correct?
But it's not even the totality of it, right?
It's all that was received by
Okay.
last Thursday.
All
But
right.
there are, but some of the documents that we received were edited, strike out, italicized, specific language that would go on for 20 pages, and
Yeah.
which might have been a little much, your first pass.
I wonder how that correlates to what
Yeah.
the chairman and Chuck are already working on.
Well,
Like, I
we
wonder if
we
there's a
were
lot
just
of
kind of,
crossover.
we were waiting, just assuming this was kind of like a pro forma exercise, then we'd get into any kind of substantive changes that the board
Right.
was entertaining on top of that. But
Right.
I suppose we should sit down and meet anyway and just go over what
There
we
is some
have.
low-lying fruit that we've discussed, like the 25 miles per hour, the
Right.
town-wide speed limit, and so there's stuff that's out there
Yeah.
that we've discussed as a board and said we need to revisit that, we need to.
Right.
Yeah, and it may be useful that if you wanted to get together, if the two champions wanted to get together with the staff who, it's maybe half a dozen that
Right.
had, staff members that had particular.
When's Anthony back?
recommendations to next Monday.
Okay, well, maybe Chuck, you and I can get together with Anthony and then follow through some of the
Yeah.
other department heads or whoever's had input. And then obviously, if we can make, if we can pawn that walk off into somebody else, then we'll take the substantive work that the
Right.
board wants to make, policy changes with.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay.
You know,
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of
Yeah,
the
for the
schedule
most
as-
part, we're looking at, I mean, these things were the cleanup category, like
Yeah.
we don't need it anymore, you can delete it, or that it's.
that's the part where I like
Yeah.
the job, part of our non-paying job is to say that needs to happen, but we're not the ones to do it.
Yeah.
The other part is the part that we want to do, right.
Unless we change and make a policy to make sure that we are paid so that we.
Right,
can
right,
follow up.
there you go. I'd be all in favor
Now
of
you're
that policy. Okay, maybe you can send Anthony an email down at Tomorrowland and tell
Sure.
him
Right.
that on
Monday
next,
morning at 9 o'clock, my
Yeah.
office, you better have this done.
next Monday, Land, be
He
ready.
might be watching, who knows?
I hope you're better than that, Anthony. All right, the board comfortable with moving forward moving on then, and we'll, Chuck and I'll work with some of the work that Anthony and Keith and the department heads have done and update you at our next meeting.
The one thing I would like to add, since we have town council here, is there's lots of small stuff, but one of the things that did jump out of these comments is the lack of a town social media policy, and I would just be interested to know
Is he on the clock yet?
what
Since seven.
since he got in his
yeah,
car on his
right.
way here, I think, right? I would be interested to know if there's such a thing as a model social media policy, or what other town social media policies might look like in the
I
interim.
swear, individual departments have adopted them already, right? So, I mean, if it's not a town-wide one, Keith, is there, there's something about that, isn't there?
We have.
Schools have one, I
We
don't
have
Right,
use,
right, there you
well,
go.
we have, acceptable use policies for the equipment, do we have a policy on, when you post things on Facebook and Twitter? Not really. We're
But
just-
towns do.
But
Towns-
right,
some
towns
do,
do, even
and
who's
we're-
responsible for
We're not taking our cues
for
from
the
federal
accounts,
government.
you know,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah, I
As
think-
well as
I
the
think Jeff
recoverability
Sessions has
of-
one that might be.
Yeah.
That's the
And,
problem you
well-
run into, it's like, who do you want policing that?
And
I
I mean,
actually did
but-
a forum on that at the MMA.
Oh, really?
Boston, yeah, I did.
Oh, no
I
kidding.
attended a forum on that.
I mean, I guess
Social media.
what I would be interested in knowing
Do you
is
have
if there
do you
is
have
such a thing
I
as a
have
model
notes I could
policy.
share,
Well,
sure.
forward along to the board, please.
I will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
A few years ago, we did look at this, and it was, many communities had kind of, we're not gonna kind of mandate what people can and cannot do. Basically, there are acceptable behavior, and so there's parameters within which are terms of employment, and if they are violating that, then those are the means that other communities were using at that point in time. So we kind of sat back a little bit and said, we'll take another look at it if it becomes a problem. So
That's
a bit-
interesting.
A bit reactive.
I think we're looking at a social media policy in different contexts there. I was thinking of it in terms of the town's use of social media, how those social media.
Communication tool.
As a communication
Okay,
tool,
well,
who controls them, who utilizes them, who's responsible for them. I think you were thinking more in terms of
Personal.
personnel utilizing social media. That's
Absolutely, that's what I was thinking
Yeah.
of.
No, but you're talking about the use of anything that's got the town of Littleton associated with it, right? I mean.
Right, exactly.
It is going under our stamp, right? Or any
Right,
department.
precisely, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I think anything we've done up to this point has been, anything that we do is in addition to all the policy that we have in place right now, and it's just a nice addition, but there's been no policy dictating that we will post.
It's been a little ad hoc and,
All
yeah.
right. Well, Cindy said she had some
There's
guidance,
information
yeah.
from the MMA.
Okay.
And-
Share
if
that
you
with
could
us,
forward that,
that'll
that'd be
prompt
useful.
us to remember to address the issue,
And
and we may also recognize that
around.
what Keith is, what Chase is talking about is different from that, but at least it'll be a reminder, so. All right, we've got these 5 liquor license violation compliance checks, sales to minor hearings to engage in. Sure. If you don't mind me starting on this, we have excellent guidance, or I feel I have excellent guidance and outline for hearing in front of me here, and I'll be operating according to that pretty directly. Before we begin, if there's anything I would ask Keith, counsel, or chief, you want to add in terms of prefatory before we enter into the 5 hearings? Keith?
I think that you will be conducting 5 separate hearings, so that as town council has advised in the outline, you'll need to be accepting, in some cases, the same report into each of the separate hearings.
Right.
And the reason we're here tonight is because the police department conducted a series of compliance checks for all the liquor licensed establishments in Littleton on a particular date in May, and that the results were that 5 of the 18 licensees were found to not met the compliance check, that, and we can get into the specifics, but there was a universe of 18 that all were treated the same, and that the results were that 5 are being brought to the board for consideration. The board has recently updated its own policy on liquor license violations, just to be sure that nothing that we do here runs afoul to what the standards are of the ABCC. And when we just talked about how old and in need of amendment some of our written policies were,
This one's only a month old, though.
and this one, yeah, and what it specifically does not do is that it does not seek to impose the harsh penalties of a sales to a minor if it occurred on other than a compliance check. That if there was a sales to a minor, it did not involve a police department compliance check, but involved a different situation.
Right.
The penalties are much harsher, and that this specifically, that we're looking to go within the guidance of the ABCC for compliance check violations. So,
Counsel?
Yeah, so just to add 2 things, to echo what Keith just said. Since these were compliance check sting operations, the purpose of those is really to educate the license holder about the importance of checking IDs. So that's the spirit that it was done in. And then your regulations detail, kind of your penalty bumpers. And so with the outline to conduct a hearing, just wanted to make the room aware. Much of that is presenting the evidence to the board, so you have the evidence to make the determination. If any of the license holders want to acknowledge the violation, I think we can, kind of cut to the chase a little bit on that.
Yep. Right, okay, fine. Chief?
I'd like to add, we've had 3 alcohol agents for the department since 2012. We have run some compliance checks in the past. Obviously, they passed. There was no failures.
There were no failures in the previous ones, huh? Well, so that's something different here, then.
So, yeah, let me add that we have a lot more liquor licenses now.
Right.
And a lot busier in town. So, an alcohol agent for the town gives us more access as agents of the alcohol agents of you than it does a regular police officer. They have to provide us with video footage, they have to provide us with receipts, and they have to talk to us if we ask questions of them. So that, all 5 now are in non-compliance during the sting operation. After the fact, we're very cooperative with our findings and have been in the past and going forward in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chief. Then I guess, Keith, I'll begin with our first hearing, which would be for Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza of Littleton, doing business as Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza. Eric Stanley Bush, manager, 201 Constitution Ave. It's an all-alcohol restaurant license. And I will call the hearing to order. I'm just following my script here that the hearing is to determine whether on May 11th, 2018, the licensee sold or delivered in an alcoholic beverage to a person less than 21 years of age in violation of Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 34. I'll enter into the public hearing notice, enter a copy of the public hearing notice into evidence, so that's officially done, right, Keith?
Yes, it's in the board packet for this evening.
Okay, I will ask the licensee, present, represented by counsel.
Yes.
You are represented by counsel?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Andrew Upton for the licensee. With me, manager of record, Eric Bush, and also with us in the back is Tom Whalen, district manager for Anthony's Coal Fire Pizza.
Okay, great. Our format from here I would ask first Detective O'Donoghue to present testimony, identifying himself first, confirming that the ABCC, well, you can come forward if you'd like and present your testimony, Detective O'Donoghue, and I'll check whether or not you've hit the points we are expecting.
Again, my name is Patrick O'Donoghue, detective at the Littleton Police Department. Also a sworn in alcohol enforcement agent since 2012. I'm just going to do a brief synopsis of my report. I believe you guys should have a copy in front of you.
Yes.
On Friday, May 11th, 2018, I'm Detective Pat O'Donoghue, working evening time hours assigned to the Criminal Investigations Division for the Littleton Police Department. I'm also assigned as an alcohol enforcement agent for the town and been duly sworn as such. On this date in evening hours, Detective Sergeant Fernandez, Detective Janakis, and myself conducted an underage liquor compliance check with all commercial establishments within the town of Littleton that hold a current or valid liquor license. We have previously established 4 cooperating individuals that were under the age of 21 over the age of 20. Over the age of 18, I apologize, that volunteered to assist us in attempting to purchase alcohol. These 4 individuals were Fitchburg State students in the criminal justice program. They volunteered to assist us in attempting to purchase alcohol from the establishments in Littleton that sold alcohol. These individuals were briefed on their roles and advised on how to properly attempt to purchase alcohol within the guidelines of the operation. An operational plan was also developed prior. During the course of the evening, these cooperating individuals that traveled to all locations determined and attempted to buy alcohol. Each cooperating individual was assigned to a detective alcohol enforcement agent. At the end of the evening, there were 5 violations from 5 different liquor serving establishments. The establishments were as follows.
Just the one.
Yeah, just the one. The one being in front of you, Anthony's Coal Fire Pizza. These establishments were in violation of correctly requesting or positive ID from the individuals requesting alcohol drinks and then selling to individuals under the age of 21. Immediately after the violation occurred, Detective Sergeant Fernandez did go in and follow up with each violation, each business. And I had then also followed up several days later with each manager for each violation.
Okay, and Sergeant Fernandez, did you have testimony to present as well?
I don't have much more to add, other
Okay.
than I did have a conversation that night with.
All right, then I'll review that we confirm that the ABCC's policies for conducting a state compliance check operation were followed. Is that correct, Detective O'Donoghue?
That's correct.
Okay, and that the undercover operative was under the age of 21 years and did identify the operative by name. I don't know, I guess that's required.
We're gonna, we
In the
talked
record?
about this, we're not gonna put it into the record at this time.
Okay, all right, I'm just going by what was provided.
Yeah, I know.
All
This
right.
one came up today.
Is it an important factoid to,
I would just like to add that I don't think at this time we need to go in depth as to the students' names and where they're from and whatnot. I would just like to say that they were our undercover operatives at this time. If it comes down to it where
if something's being contested, then perhaps we can, yeah,
go
right,
forward at that
okay,
point.
all right.
At this point, I don't think there's a need to give the students' names.
All right, you provided testimony again, Detective O'Donoghue, relative to May 11th. You provided testimony regarding the follow-up discussions with the licensee, which were conducted by Sergeant Fernandez, correct? The copies of the police report have been entered into evidence. We've asked Sergeant Fernandez for anything additional. It's not there, so now my turn to ask the licensee some questions. Again, you're welcome to yourself or through counsel, however you want, if you would like an opportunity to present whatever evidence you wish.
What's that?
Will we have the opportunity to ask the detective any questions about his testimony?
I don't have any problem with that. Okay, sure.
Detective, was this the manager of record that was spoken to by your department
That's
the
correct.
days after?
Mr. Eric Bush, that's correct, sir.
And he was cooperative and forthcoming?
Extremely cooperative and forthcoming, yes.
And the manager-
Very upset about the incident.
And the manager on duty that night
Yes.
was also cooperative and
Yes.
forthcoming? Okay. And I don't know if we got into this in the testimony, but I think I saw somewhere that the bartender in question actually did ask the person for ID, but then the underage operative said they didn't have it and said maybe it was in the car or somewhere else.
Okay.
And then the failure, the alleged failure came then, even though they did the right thing by asking, they didn't follow up.
Right.
Is that,
Right, the alcohol was still served, correct?
the alcohol was served because the person said, well, my ID's at home or my ID's in the
That's
car or
correct.
something, and then she failed to follow up.
That's correct.
Okay. That's all we have for the detective.
Only questions then, because I'll move then to questions from the board. And if you have anything else, I'll give you an opportunity to follow up if there's anything necessary. Board members, do you have any questions to the licensee?
The only thing that jumped out at me was the incident, the violation occurred on May 11th. The Sergeant Fernandez went back on the 14th. And I thought it said in here that the employee involved was going to be spoken to. Had not been spoken to yet by the time Sergeant Fernandez had gone back.
I believe that's because the employee in question had not been identified by the police to the manager until that time.
Sergeant Fernandez immediately,
Is that
and
correct?
tell me if I'm wrong, you immediately, after the violation occurred, Sergeant Fernandez immediately went in to the establishment to notify the manager of the violation. Then I followed up at another date and talked to Mr. Eric Bush. And I apologize if the dates were confused. May 15th is when I actually followed up with all the establishments in town that were in violation and spoke to him about the violation. And that's when he had already identified the bartender that was working that night when I spoke with him.
So for the board, when Mr. Bush was alerted as to who the bartender was that failed the compliance check, he terminated her.
Okay.
And he can speak to that.
Yeah, there was two bartenders on that evening, and she was the one that did it. She was actually a rather valuable employee. She opened the restaurant for me, she closed the restaurant for me. She was my trainer. Had been there a while, but it's against policy, so it had to be taken care of. So.
Right.
And is this the same bartender who, in the past year, identified an intoxicated patron and affirmatively called the police to help her take care of that?
Yes.
So we just want you to know, I mean, this
Okay.
was someone who was pretty good and who was well-trained and who was responsible, but she made a mistake
She
and
failed.
we've all paid for it.
Duly noted, and
Right.
appreciate you presenting that information. Anything further on that line you want to pursue?
It was just a tip certification. I used to waitress and bartend, and I assume all your wait staff's tip certified.
100%. And actually, since this, we've had rigorous alcohol training since then as well.
Right.
Constant classrooms. And as a matter of fact, we've taken it a step further where our district manager has had tip certification training courses, even for people that are already certified, because just because you certify once doesn't mean that
Right.
you stay focused on it.
Right.
And he's done it in every location in New England. I mean, this was an eye-opening situation.
Right.
All of our New England restaurant employees.
For the record, you might want to identify yourself again, sir, for the
Sorry,
record.
Tom Whalen.
And you're the regional manager?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's excellent. Thank you. That's all.
It's very important.
Chase, any questions?
Yeah, a couple. Can you describe to me Anthony's policy with respect to failure of a compliance check in personnel? In other words, does your policy call for letting this bartender go, or was
Yes.
that a discretionary choice?
No, it's in the handbook that they have set guidelines to follow, responsible vending and service of alcohol at up to a terminable offense. And this is definitely a terminable offense.
The second question that I had was Have you performed compliance checks at Anthony's in the past, or was this the first compliance check that LPD has performed?
This was the first compliance check with the amount of liquor establishments we have now in town.
Okay.
Our prior compliance check, I think there was only 8 to 10 maybe, if that.
Yeah.
And this was quite a few years back. So
Okay.
Anthony's wasn't even built the last time we had done a
Yeah, I
compliance
wasn't
check.
sure what the frequency.
But no previous violations, sir, whatsoever.
That's all I have.
Chuck?
Stole my thunder.
Okay.
I'm pleased that recognizes in the seriousness of the situation, the actions that has been taken. It's not a case where they're taking this very lightly at all, so I want to commend you on that.
It's my livelihood. I mean, it's my restaurant. It's me, you know? It's my place, so it's very important.
Okay. At this point, unless there's any other questions from board members or any follow-up from council or the licensee, I'm going to ask if there's anyone else present that'd like to speak to the matter. And I don't see anything. So at this point, I would, without objection, move to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion?
Second.
Motion second to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, from here, we need to do two functions, three functions. Deliberate on whether a violation occurred and then vote accordingly. And if a violation is found, deliberate on a penalty, vote accordingly, and then thirdly, close the hearing. So, members, what say you? Is there a question as to whether or not a violation occurred?
No.
Okay, all right. Then I would ask, again, I need a motion on that too, and that's provided for us here, Keith,
Yeah,
right?
motion number one,
Yep.
and just that it did, as opposed to.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to find satisfactory proof that licensee Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza of Littleton, doing business as Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza, Eric Stanley Bush, manager, 201 Constitution Ave, all alcohol restaurant, did sell alcohol to a minor under the age of 21 during a compliance check conducted on May 11, 2018 by the Littleton Police Department.
Sorry.
Okay, then the motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. All right, now, second deliberation is if a violation is found, we need to deliberate on a penalty, and I think we have some guidance on that as well, as has been provided in our packet. I'll open it to the board members if they want to suggest something, otherwise there is some precedence here.
Do you mind if I
Sure,
ask?
go right
counsel
ahead,
a
yeah.
Question. We have the option of holding some or all of a suspension in abeyance, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so that could be any portion of it up to the 3 days within, okay. That was my question.
Okay. Any more deliberate, or is there any deliberation on what the board members would think is an appropriate penalty for the violation? Anyone jump in?
I mean, my sense is, given the numerous steps that they took in response to it, that in the fact that this was the first violation, I don't see any need for a suspension at this establishment. And that's driven almost entirely by the fact that they took it seriously, training other staff, handling of the personnel involved in the failure of the compliance check. All of those things add up to a lack of a suspension.
And the fact that they use the incident as a training.
Right.
As an opportunity to teach others and the very serious consequence that lies before it.
Which was the intention to begin with.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's being suggested here, I think, seems to be a consensus form that there would not be any specific penalty, suspension, modification of license proposed at this time, even a one held
In abeyance.
in abeyance, and that, again, a recognition both of your record of no prior incidences and the actions surrounding how you folks have conducted yourselves once apprised of the situation. Is that Does that sound fair with everybody here? In which case, Joe, did you?
No, I think Chase hit it right in the head with all
Yeah.
the points he made. I think that's exactly the way we should be going with this.
Okay. All right, then I'm not sure, Keith, do we make any motion at all on that?
I defer to council. I would think that you would want to take, if you,
Vote
even if
no
you're going
action.
to, you want to take a vote that you're taking no action.
Right,
So that it
okay.
closes the matter and.
All right.
So I guess I might restate what you said as a warning.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so you're issuing a
Issuing a
warning,
warning,
but there
okay.
won't be any
You can do that
suspension.
pursuant to Mass General Law 138.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Sure, counsel?
council can confer with this, confirm this, but if you take a vote of no action, that means you're finding that there is a violation, yet you're administering no penalty. If you take a vote of no action and you impose a warning under Chapter 138 counts as a violation. So if there was a second violation, you would then be administering a 7 to 15-day penalty on the second round, even though you didn't originally want to impose any penalty on the first. Am I correct?
I believe that's my understanding.
So
You do
we'll-
not have to issue a 7 to 15 day. It is within your discretion. If
Right.
there's a second violation,
Too, right?
the warning.
Right, of course, but to be clear, a finding of no action is no action. A finding of a warning is a much more significant penalty for the licensee.
Well.
And I would say that that was very much what I intended, that I would like this identified as a violation without incurring any penalty for this event. Should subsequent events prove that this is a recurring problem, then I want it acknowledged in the record that this event did occur, and we don't start
Now
from
that
zero.
the clarification on what the warning may signify on future incidences, how are you with that? What's your intent?
Based on that clarification, my intention was to suggest that we issue a warning here without any suspension.
Okay,
May I ask another question?
sure.
Is it, if you issue a warning, a second violation, even if it was, according to the rules, 9 years from now, would still come back to haunt the licensee?
It could. There's a lot of factors in play, but
There are ranges of penalty that can be applied anyway, correct?
Of course, of
If
course.
it were a second, just on the board's rules, if it were a second violation for which the board's policy says it could be up to 7 days, and the first violation is up to 3 days, it would, if there were a next hearing and there was another finding, it could still be up to 3 days, because up to 3 is still, less than.
Within 7.
Within 7.
Right.
So there's nothing that necessarily says that we have to jump over 3 and get to 7.
Understood. So,
And counsel, one other clarification point, I think you're taking the violation from the wrong section. We're actually working under the violations associated with the compliance check and sting operations, which is up to a 7-day suspension, which I understand would still be significant for things, but.
fair enough. So my question on all that is, could you vote to issue a warning and hold that warning in abeyance? Is that a choice for the board?
Chief, are you looking to speak here?
I'd like to weigh in if it's possible.
Yep.
I understand what the attorney's trying to say, and I think it's actually very logical, and I'll defer to Attorney Harrington in regards to this. But I think what he's trying to say is, can they have a 1-year abeyance for that warning? If there's nothing further any action for that 1 year possible, will it go away at that point in time and go back to a first offense? Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that an option we have before us?
So you can put so the way your policy reads is that the warning is in place for 10 years.
Yeah.
If you want to limit that to some fewer number of years, you can do that too. It's entirely
Your call. I mean, you.
Well, it's the chief's
What?
opinion.
Sorry, yep, chief.
I honestly think that they went above and beyond, and they've been extremely cooperative for us. I think if we did, the day suspension is up to you, the board, obviously, the LLA, but I think a 2-day suspension in abeyance for 1 year would be satisfactory for the police department and for the cooperatives that they've shown us.
Well, we were, and we'll take that into consideration, but we did have another proposal on the table that didn't indicate any days, but,
Well, I mean, I suppose if we're holding it in abeyance, the number of days doesn't ultimately matter, provided that there's no violation in the interim, right? I mean, whether it's a warning in abeyance or 3 days in abeyance, nothing happens if there's no.
I just want to make sure it's on record that they did have one violation. I don't want to just see it go away and,
Well, I
well,
mean,
that would be, you know.
That's what I'm confused about with the language here. I thought at the very beginning it was kind of simplified by what you had said. Now-
If the motion is either, and I'm presenting this for council, if it were either, to hold in abeyance for a period of what do you say, a year or 2 years, is that what you, one year period, either a warning or a suspension for 2 days, either one of those after a year's time without incident would go away and would not affect the 9-year cycle, is that correct?
that.
Get that?
Yeah, but is that what we want?
I just want to be clarified, be clear about what the ramifications were. What we want, that's the question before the board.
Mr. Chairman,
If we could.
Well, yeah, one more time, council.
last time, I mean, obviously what you want in terms of the penalty is up to you, but what we're asking is that whatever it is, doesn't hang over our head for another
Okay,
9 years.
duly noted, the hearing, that part's actually been closed, but.
Yeah, so I would think that we're gonna be somewhere between 1 year and 2 year in abeyance, and it's a matter of whether or not that punishment, if there is a violation within those 2 years, we need to automatically impose 2-year suspension.
I mean, there's nothing in our regulations that's automatic
Nope.
until they hit. I don't think there's anything automatic.
It's up to and including, and then the ABCC has authority above and beyond us, correct, Keith, folks?
Well, I mean, the issue comes of what's appealable, and it might be helpful to get some guidance on that. For example, if it's a warning, or if it's no action, I presume that no action is not appealable, there's nothing to appeal to the ABCC. If it's a warning, I would presume even that is appealable to the ABCC. So, so if there was initial discussion that it'd be a warning and maybe it goes away after some period of time, even that action would be, if the licensee wants to appeal that to the ABCC, they can do it.
Well, all right, well, I personally, I'm not, people can consider whether or not they want to factor in the ABCC's role to, overrule us, fine, I'm not concerned about that personally,
I think
but,
it's what we're comfortable with.
yeah, that's what I'd kind of like to hear. I mean, I think we've got it out there, we have the option to put a time limit on it, and we've got an option to not have a finding, or to not have a penalty, to have a penalty, a warning, or a, suspension for 2 days. Those are two options we put on the table. Both talked about in terms of being suspended for a period of a year. If there's anything further deliberatively, I'd like to hear, but otherwise, maybe we need to move on and have someone make a motion. and we can-
I have a proposal for you.
Okay.
I would like to hold, given this discussion, 3 days in abeyance for 2 years, and the reason that I would like to hold it in abeyance for 2 years, notwithstanding the chief's recommendation, is that this was the first compliance check, and they're now over one. And so that to me suggests extending it out from a year to 2 years puts them on notice, and but if after 2 years everything is fine, then it can go away, and I'm comfortable with that.
Are you making that in form of a motion, or are you just putting it
I'm
on the table
moving
for
that we
discussion?
issue a violation of 3 days of suspension to be held in abeyance for 2 years.
Okay, so that's a motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded, motion's been made and seconded, so deliberation at this point is on the motion, or clarification, did you have something?
So I think if we're at the point where we're ready to take no action, and we've gone from having a day, and then maybe 2 days, and now up to 3 days in 2 years. So we went from having a day or two in a year to 3 days, 2 years. And I understand the rationale behind it.
All held in abeyance too.
Correct. And it, obviously doesn't go, if nothing happens, then nothing goes on, it doesn't, the 9-year clock gets eliminated. It's basically expunged, right? But I think, given the action that was taken, I think there was some punishment taken here, and unfortunately for the manager, it was somebody who was extremely valuable to him and his operation. Whether or not we take that into consideration is up to each of us individually, but I think that's a little bit harsh.
Do you want to suggest a
modification or an amendment?
Amendment?
I think 2 days in 1 year is, I'm comfortable with that.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that as a motion
You have a
to
motion
amend.
to amend.
This is a motion, this is a motion to amend. I'm following this.
I'll make a motion to amend Mr. Gerbig's motion.
There's an end game here, all right. I need a second before we can even entertain it.
Oh,
Second.
Okay, so now discussion is actually on Chuck's amendment.
council, if we're gonna hold it in abeyance, a year goes by, no violations, a year and 1 day, there's another violation, they start back at 1.
First violation.
Is that correct? Yep. It's first violation.
We could treat it entirely differently, though.
You can.
Falls back here.
Yep, completely understand. But we couldn't exceed a 3-day suspension within our policy.
Correct.
Within your policy.
All right, if there's no more discussion, the motion then would be on Chuck's motion to amend, which is to modify Chase's original motion to be 1 year and 2 days held in abeyance. So that's the motion.
I think you just made my argument, but with that clarification.
Any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of Chuck's amendment to modify Chase's initial motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, then the motion now has been changed, but we're back to the modified motion. Any further discussion on the motion as amended? Okay, I think this was a healthy discussion. We haven't done this in a long while, which is a good thing. We don't want to do this again.
We prefer not to do this.
So we appreciate you folks and the good business you bring to town and the work you do and the seriousness with which you take that. I hope you, in reflection, see the seriousness with which we similarly treat this. We're doing the town's business, and we look to you as a partner going forward. So, all right, then all those in favor of the motion as, well, we already did that. No, the second, I need to ratify that with the second motion. All those in favor of the motion as amended?
Could you put it in the form of number 2?
Okay, yeah, would someone like to restate what we just voted on in terms of that motion then, please?
Yeah, that from the pro forma motion that was up there, that it says you would suspend for 2 days and to be held in abeyance for 1 year. And the rest of the language has been crafted by town council, things we have to do to.
All right.
Both the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Sections 23 and 64, to suspend for 2 days the all-alcohol restaurant license issued to Anthony's Coal Fire Pizza of Littleton, doing business as Anthony Coal Fire Pizza. Eric Stanley Bush, manager, 201 Constitution Ave, to be held in abeyance for 1 year, and further to instruct the town administrator to mail notice of this action, a statement of the reason for such action, and a right of appeal notice to the licensee and the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission.
Second?
Okay, great. Then the motion has been made and seconded. That'll be treated as the amended motion. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Great. And I'll declare the hearing closed. Thank you, folks, and
Thank you
look
very
forward
much.
to seeing you in happier occasions.
Absolutely.
All right, running. I don't think. I think you just closed the hearing, right, Keith? Or do I need a motion?
You're all set. You've completed your business on that.
Right.
You get to navigate another one.
All right. Well, hopefully.
Now that
we've
you have-
kind of worked out the
One under
bugs.
your belt?
Should go like-
And even with that, we're only a couple minutes.
Yeah, we're gonna do all right. Then we are moving to our second liquor license violation hearing notice, and that is for 3Gs and J Incorporated, doing business as Common Convenience, Joseph Mansour, manager, 5 Stevens Street, wine and malt package store. Hello, Joe. I'll repeat through the process, but hopefully, myself included, we'll all do our parts a little quicker, and anything that doesn't need to be restated, perhaps we won't need to. Although, the seriousness of each individual violation should not be lost in that process, or alleged violation. I'll call the hearing to order, and let's see. I'll state again that the purpose of this hearing is to determine whether on May 11th, 2018, the licensee sold or delivered an alcoholic beverage to a person less than 21 years of age in violation of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 138, Section 34. A copy of the public hearing notice has been entered into evidence. Is that correct? Yes?
Yes.
I'll ask the licensee again to confirm that he has received the notice.
Yes, I did.
You have, okay. Are you represented by counsel?
No, just myself.
Okay, fine.
That's okay.
Yeah, all right, and I will again ask Detective O'Donoghue to present testimony and again touch on those points that we would need to have confirmed as well.
Yeah, good evening. You want me to read through the whole thing?
Just the part that's relevant to common convenience. I think that's fine, right?
Right, yeah, right,
Yeah.
read the whole thing.
Again, on Friday, May 11th, myself, Detective Pat O'Donoghue, was working alongside Sergeant Fernandez and Detective Janakis with an alcohol compliance check of 18 liquor establishments in town. On that evening, we had 4 cooperating individuals that are under the age of 21, but over the age of 18, working with us, criminal justice students from the Fitchburg State College. One of the individuals was sent into common convenience on that evening and purchased a 18-pack of Bud Light beer, cans. He was not counted at the time, and he walked out of the establishment with the 18-pack. I just wanted to also note to the board, so you guys have on record, that there was a notice of the compliance check that was posted in the newspaper regarding, it was part of what we knew.
Prior to the 11th?
Prior to the 11th, yes, sir. Is that
Okay,
okay?
yeah, no, I think that, and then the next part of the process involves Sergeant Fernandez, is that correct?
Nothing further to add, other than I did speak with the employee that night, and at a later time spoke with Joe from Common Convenience.
Okay, and anything to add substantively there?
Only that he was in complete cooperation with us following up.
Okay,
And
thank
I
you,
did also
Sergeant.
follow up with Joe
Okay.
several days later on the 15th in regarding to violation. Again, extremely cooperative with us, with the police department, and also with that employee.
Okay. Your turn, Mr. Mansour. Is there anything you'd like to present in evidence or comment?
Well, there's no evidence other than, first of all, I'd like to apologize for the incident for happened. We take the job very seriously, and we understand the importance of abiding by the rules and regulations. The employee that violated that rule has been with me for 5 years. She has never had any problems at all. My policy dictates that any matter to that serious, it's up 1 to 3 days of suspension or termination. I decided to go with 1 to 3 termination, suspension, which is 2 days of suspension, and then I also have asked her to redo the test again for the beer and wine certification. Okay, she did that again, and I have the date that she completed that, which was June from the tips, and she did that on June 24.
Have you provided a copy of that for the department?
There's a copy, you can have the copy, but she is also certified from before, but she has to do it again. Not trying to defend her at all, she knows that she did a mistake. She just said that I had a stupid moment and I just took that matters easily, and I should know better. There is nothing that I can say other than the fact I take responsibility for everything that happened, because we emphasize a lot on the importance of selling beer and wine and tickets and everything to a minor. The rule says that anybody who's 30 years or older, you're supposed to check their ID. So there is no question asked. There is no reason for us to do what we did. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. For 15 years, we haven't ever had any violation. And I have to keep my eyes more open, I guess, so.
All right. If there's anything that comes up in the further deliberation, I'd certainly give you a chance to speak up, but at this point, I'll ask board members whether they would have any questions, and I know I've been standing at this side of the room all night long, so Joe, I'll start with you, if you have any questions or comments?
Just first, Joe, how long have you been there?
In here,
No, at the, how long have you had the store?
15 years.
15 years? You never had a problem before? And this lady has taken what you said was a...
She has tip certified. She, as a matter of fact, owned a business, and she's a bartender, and she had a restaurant, so she knows the importance and seriousness of this matter. She just had a mistake at a moment, she said. So I had a nice talk with her, and she is certified again, so you have to take it seriously all the time. Sometimes you'll be doing one thing, you get busy with another thing, so not to buy any excuse to anybody. You should be able to handle 1 or 2 or 3 things as they come your face. So we take that seriously, and that shouldn't happen again.
Chuck?
So your policy, you mentioned that anybody that's 30 years of, anybody looks like they're 30 years or younger, the policy is to cover that.
That's basically what the tip certified even does, the training.
Right.
This is what the policy is.
And then your punishment for anybody that doesn't follow policy is 1 to 3 days suspension.
1 to 3 days suspension or termination.
And she was.
She
trained.
cooperated.
She cooperated.
She
and went through the
cooperated.
training.
And she admits that she did a mistake, so.
And I've been in there and I've
As
seen
somebody
it
has been
time.
here for 5 years, she lives in town. She's never had any problem. She doesn't have a traffic ticket, so the girl is trying to work, make a living. She screwed up.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's.
I gave her a chance, so.
I mean, you gotta check ID for lottery if you think somebody's below
Everything.
18. and
Cigarettes.
Everything.
Cigarettes, and yeah. so-
Everything.
And I've been in there and I've seen
Everything.
employees check for
Everything.
tobacco products. But, I just wanted to clarify on the policies. Thank you.
Okay. Chase?
Detective, in the past compliance checks, common convenience, everything looked okay? Okay. So you,
No violations.
you agree that there haven't been any violations, everybody's on the same page here?
I do agree.
That's my only clarifying question.
Okay. Cindy?
I appreciate your proactive response to the incident. And I appreciate the proactive response on the behalf of your employee, having her be do the recertification. She made a mistake.
She did.
Admittedly made a mistake, and it happens, unfortunately, for you, but, you've been in business a long time. You've done a lot of great things with the community for a long time, haven't had any problems. So I appreciate you addressing this issue head-on, being open and honest about it, and forthright about it, and your proactive response.
Thank you.
Welcome.
If there are any other board member questions, we obviously will have a chance when we get into the deliberation, but at this point during the evidentiary portion of the hearing, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the matter? And hearing none, then I would look for a motion then to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing.
So moved.
Motion's made and seconded then to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. All right, again, we have to first deliberate on whether or not a violation occurred. And I don't know if there's any discussion on that. Is there anyone? No? Okay. Then again, I'd be looking for a motion, please, on whether or not a violation occurred, and that would be consistent with the language provided somewhere. Right? Yes, at 7B, the first one?
7B.
Yeah.
Motion 1.
The Board of Selectmen vote to find satisfactory proof license 3G and J Incorporated doing business as Common Convenience, Joseph Manser, manager, 5 Stevens Street, wine and malt package store, did sell alcohol to a minor under the age of 21 during compliance check conducted on May 11, 2018 by the Littleton Police Department.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, no, the ayes have it. Now, again, a deliberation on the penalty situation. Well, we'll leave it to the board. What do folks see? How do you receive the?
I think 15 years speaks for itself. I mean, something like this could happen anytime, in any store, and it hasn't happened in 15 years of good business, so I can't see us taking any strong action other than, I don't know what the proposal is yet, but.
Okay.
I think that 15 years coupled with your candor, sir, and acknowledging that a problem happened and really fulfilling the objectives of our policy, which is to teach, to learn, to minimize this going forward. So the 15 years plus the candor suggests to me that something held in abeyance for a relatively short amount of time would probably be an appropriate response here as well.
Okay, maybe we'll try to get some other input from everybody before we get a motion, but Cindy, anything to add in advance of a motion?
Right. I don't have anything more to add. I would echo what Jay said. I mean, 15 years is a long time. There's been no violation. Well-known in the community. I think the 15 years really speaks for itself. Plus your response to the situation holds a lot of weight with me,
Yeah.
so.
I would add, and this is a point of distinction between the prior hearing, I know those folks, certainly meant business at Anthony's by firing the employee, because that was their policy. I hope that isn't seen as a necessary, in all instances, so I'm not holding that as a, the mantle has been established, and I think the circumstances here are distinct for reasons cited, the length of a relationship between the town and the licensee. And I would agree that, Joe's been very forthcoming here, as in every instance when he's dealt with the town, and the employee in question was quick to acknowledge the problem and went right for, I'll take the test again, and, what more really could you ask them to do at that point?
Right.
I agree. I think the act of contrition, if you will, and the employee being willing to take the recertification, even though she's already certified, I mean, you don't get extra certified, but just to do the refresher course, similar to what happened at Anthony's. And having, I think we've all been into each of these establishments, on occasion or two.
Yep.
And having been in common convenience and seen employees ask folks that didn't look like they should be old enough to buy tobacco products. So I think it was just an oversight in the fact that the licensee implemented his policy, punished the employee, and the employee was contrite and willing to do this, coupled with all the other statements from my colleagues.
All right, are we ready for a motion then? Someone want to make a suggestion?
I would suggest a one-day suspension held in abeyance for 1 year.
Yeah.
I second that.
Okay, then a motion's been made and seconded then that the penalty to be instituted here would be a one-day suspension of license held in abeyance for 1 year. Any further discussion on that?
No.
Okay, all those in favor signify, actually,
You wanna take that
we should probably, make that
form of
motion.
number 2, yeah.
Formalize that, please, Joe, you.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 23 and 64, to suspend for 1 day the wine and malt package store license issued to 3Gs and J Incorporated doing business as Common Convenience, Joseph Mansour, Manager, 5 Stevens Street, to be held in abeyance for 1 year, and further to instruct the town administrator to mail a notice of this action, a statement of the reasons for such action, and the right of appeal notice to the licensee and the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission.
Sorry.
Okay, then the motion's been made and seconded. Probably should have done this earlier, but the department chief, you folks, okay with the direction we're moving in this?
Absolutely.
All right, then all those in favor again signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? You guys have it. Joe, you understood what we just did?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Again, we appreciate the good service you bring to the people of Littleton. We, by the same token, appreciate that you understand how serious this matter is, and we look forward to a happier occasion to see you again.
Thank you. We will.
Okay.
And there's a copy, I'll leave there.
Okay, and I'll close the hearing. Just in time to open the next one.
Thank you.
No, actually, we're a little late on, I'm sorry, apologize for the folks who've been waiting. But we do have another hearing. Keith, am I okay to go right ahead and?
Yes, it's, let's see, it's after 8:10, so we
Yeah.
can do that. I'm just-
Okay, let's see, I was gonna find it in my package. Here it is, okay.
Let's see.
All right, so I'll call the hearing to order. It's relative to Point Hospitality LLC, doing business as Marriott Courtyard, Boston Littleton. Tim Burkhart, manager, 102 Constitution Ave, and in question is a all-alcohol restaurant license. I'll state that the hearing is to determine whether on May 11th, 2018, the licensee sold or delivered an alcoholic beverage to a person less than 21 years of age in violation of Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 34. A copy of the public hearing notice will be entered into evidence, and I'll ask the licensee to confirm whether or not you have received the notice.
We have.
Okay, great. Do you want to identify yourself again for the record?
My name is Tim Burkhart.
Okay, great. And are you represented by counsel?
I am not.
Okay. This gentleman also...
Joining me is Mark Turgeon from, he's our general manager at the hotel.
Okay, terrific. You've been there, so you know the process we're going to follow. I'm going to ask Detective Donahue to present testimony specific to this incident. Please, Detective.
Again, Detective Pat O'Donoghue, with the Criminal Investigations Division in Middleton, also sworn as the alcohol enforcement agent for the town of Middleton. On May 11th, 2018, again, we conducted a compliance check with all 18 businesses in town that possess valid liquor licenses. On this date and time, we had an operative go into the Marriott on Constitution Ave and purchase alcohol without being properly ID'd by the waitress. The violation was noted. Sergeant Fernandez went in right after the violation, spoke to the manager on duty, and then again followed up on the 15th with the manager, the charger.
Okay, and
he again was also extremely cooperative, and I believe the steps he was going to be taking was to terminate that employee.
Okay. Sergeant Fernandez, anything to add?
Nothing more.
Okay, great. Then I believe the confirmation of the ABC policies being conducted in compliance with their policies case. Did you mention, again, I apologize if I didn't hear it this time, that the operatives were under the age of 21 but over the age of 18?
I'm sorry, yes sir, they were.
I'm sorry, okay.
Under 21 but over 18.
Okay, great. And the copies of the police report have been entered or will be entered into evidence, correct? And we will ask then, I will ask the licensee, Mr. Burkhart, if you'd like an opportunity to present whatever evidence you wish or any statement you'd like to make.
Sure, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I just have a brief statement to make, if I may. The management in the hotel take this matter extremely seriously. All of the bistro managers and servers are tips trained within 30 days of being hired. This individual was tip certified. The incident in May served as a significant reminder for both of us that we count on our hourly team members on the front lines to follow the policies that we have in place. These procedures need to be constantly monitored by us and enforced, by the management team there. And I think that's where the breakdown is. We have policy in place, but our people on the front line need to, make sure that they uphold them, and we need to monitor that. That employee, in fact, was terminated. After that event took place, we revisited our ID policy with all the staff. Retraining took place. And, to the best of our ability right now, we're checking IDs on an everyday basis. And we follow, one of the previous gentlemen mentioned the 30-day 30 years old rule, and we follow that as well.
Okay, great. At this point, I'll ask board members if they have any questions to ask.
I don't have any questions. I'm satisfied with your written statement. Thank you.
Okay. Chase?
Detective, you had noted that in this instance, alcohol was served without being properly ID'd.
That's correct.
Do you have any more details on that? Did the person requesting the alcohol, were they initially asked for ID and then they said they didn't have it, or were they just not asked for ID?
I don't have those specific details. They were sent in, actually all four of them were sent in to the Marriott.
Okay.
There's two different couples. And they ordered drinks and the drinks were served to them. Again, I don't have any further information. It's a conversation that occurred between the
So
applicants
the
and-
drinks were served to the entire party?
Yes.
Okay.
If we could interject, there was two individuals. We have camera system, we wanted to use it as a training tool, obviously wanted to evaluate the situation ourselves to see how it transpired, and there was two females that were.
Yeah,
were
so they
served.
walked in as two gentlemen went to the bathroom, and then the other two.
My apologies, then, if that's what they said happened. Again, we had the information all four, went into their order drinks, and then they came out.
Either way, it shouldn't have happened.
No, very good.
Just wanted to
trying to
clarify
understand
for
the
you.
exact
That's
circumstances.
good to
but
know
that's
you
good.
have the
Thank you.
video too,
And taking the steps to review it and understand it. If I may ask, as you note that you've used it as a training tool, what have you done with the staff that you have retained?
Yeah,
to
so we
actually
had
go
a
through the training?
meeting right after the event has happened. Obviously, the circumstances were a little complicated in the respect that the gentleman was actually training one of the ladies that was at the counter that night, and he was tip certified, and he was the one that really actually served them the drink despite. So we obviously showed the footage to our management staff first, because honestly, we don't want to show it to every hourly employee, and kind of just reiterated what had happened in the events and not knowing who is really, it could be anybody. And a lot of people said, hey, it was kind of questionable. They looked mature, but they weren't of age, obviously. So we used that, and then we had a staff meeting, went over the policies again. We actually read through the whole policy again as to what we have, and I actually have it in here for you if you actually wanted it. And just reiterating all the facts and such as well, so. And obviously, they are tip certified, and I have copies of, like our food and beverage supervisor's certification, everybody's certification here. so.
Anything of that the department would like copies of, or not at this point?
We'll definitely take the copies of it, if you gotta get what happens to the file, or along with the reports that we have at this point in time.
Okay.
It's gonna have in the future. if there's any
Yeah,
issue.
I can send them over to the
That's the
office.
risk you run when you make the offer.
I appreciate you coming prepared with all that. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Selectman Knox?
Nothing to add, taking how seriously you have taken, you've used the video to help out in training. It's obviously they regard what happened was a mistake and it can't happen again.
Selectman Coast?
Just zero tolerance policy, just if it happens, that's a terminable offense, or just.
It's up to
Circumstantial,
termination.
okay, yeah.
Under the circumstances, obviously knowing that we'd already gone through extensive training with that person, I mean, we kind of took extensive action because of that, so.
And the fact, like I mentioned before with the Anthony's, that the fact that you're using it as a training opportunity, there's no better way to learn than.
Absolutely.
All right, I don't have any direct questions, but I would ask if there were anyone else present in the room that had any questions during this evidentiary portion of the hearing. And hearing none, then I would ask for a motion then to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing.
So moved.
Motion's made and, is there a second over this? Second somewhere. All right, motion made and seconded to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. All right, now deliberation on whether or not a violation occurred. Again, I don't think there's any debate on that. All right, and if not, then again, I would entertain a motion on that, and that should follow the, number one on the board. We're getting good at this now.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to find satisfactory proof that licensee Point Hospitality LLC, DBA Marriott Courtyard Boston Littleton, Tim Burkhardt, manager 102 Constitution Ave, all alcohol restaurant, did sell alcohol to a minor under the age of 21 during a compliance check conducted on May 11, 2018 by the local police department.
Second?
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded then. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We'll move along. Now that a violation has been found and voted, we will deliberate on penalty, and I open that to the board based on what you've heard. Any suggestions?
I think similar to Anthony's, there was it's been taken very seriously by management. I think similar situation. We don't have the years of service that the second
Yeah,
operator
just to
had.
confirm that there hadn't been any prior, no prior incidents, but also no prior compliance checks, is that correct? Okay, so this is kind of virgin territory.
Similar situation with Anthony, so I would recommend that we follow the same.
All right. Is that for discussion purpose at this point, or are we going to take it as a motion?
Just assume we make it a motion.
All
I
right.
agree, I think that.
Okay, then do you want to make that a motion, Chuck?
I do. Is that up to Keith? Go to it. Move the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Sections 23 and 64, to suspend for 2 days the all-alcohol restaurant license issued to Point Hospitality LLC, DBA Harriet Courtyard, Boston, Littleton. Tim Burkhardt, manager, 102 Constitution Act, to be held in abeyance for 1 year, and further to instruct the town administrator to mail notice to this action, a statement of reasons for such action, and a right of appeal notice to the licensee and the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission.
Okay. The motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Do you understand the action we just took?
I do.
Okay, great. We, again, very appreciate very much having the Marriott Courtyard in town. It's a great addition to the community. But like us, you have a responsibility, and we appreciate that you take it seriously. And hopefully, we'll see you next on, who knows, an expansion or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, great.
Second hotel up there?
Yeah.
All right.
Just saying.
Could be.
Close the hearing.
You guys are packed all the time.
Thank you.
We are. That's great. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your time.
Okay.
I do have one general comment,
Yes.
which is that, at least, I appreciate when they make a business decision to let the person go, but letting the person go doesn't necessarily factor into my evaluation of how
Yeah.
seriously they've taken it.
Well, okay, that wasn't clear where you were going to go with that, but I hate to hold that standard to everybody.
That's what I want to clarify, that is not the standard that must be met
Yeah.
for
Absolutely. That's
reasonable
why I asked, is
conditions.
it zero tolerance, or is it up to, or,
That in and of itself does nothing to ensure what the next person's going to do.
Right.
It's really the other actions that were more compelling to me, the video and the training and all
actions
that.
taken, right?
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, we're not too late into our 8:30 hearing, which again, 7D in our packet. Let's see, would you be, let me see if I get your name here, Nafreet Singh?
Actually, he left a long time ago, and
Oh.
I have the new manager there.
Do we have a change of manager of license? No? All right, well, have a seat.
Let's talk.
Okay, we'll start with the hearing. Okay, so the hearing again is for a liquor license violation, Japman Inc., doing business as Masala Bay. On our license, Navpreet Singh, manager, 501 Constitution Ave, all alcohol restaurant license. That's the person to whom the license has been issued. Tom?
So, as the chief just points out, we don't have the license holder here. So I think we need the license holder here before we conduct the hearing.
Okay, well, let me just confirm then with this gentleman that, could you identify yourself and what your position is?
Actually, I handles the manager positions now. I am taking care of as a new manager now.
Well, we have a licensing process where we issue a license to an individual to be the manager of record, and that's not what our record shows. That Mr. Singh, is he no longer with the business?
No, he is not coming to the restaurants right now.
Well, are you still serving liquor?
Yes.
Well, under what license? It's in his name.
He comes in the restaurant, but not regularly. Like he's not a regular customer. Not regular.
Well, we have it here that he's the manager of record, that he's supposed to be the on-site manager. Counsel, again, advice on this?
So I think we need to at least hit pause on this hearing, because we want the license holder here to understand what happened and understand their response and to issue the penalty with the license holder here. I think they need to be instructed to immediately, either Mr. Singh needs to contact us and get himself back in the program, or they need to be.
You know, we may have two issues here, you know, the
Operating without a manager.
yeah, that's not the conditions under which your business was granted the license from the town. It was very specific that there's a person, and he presented himself as being the on-site manager. And now we have a violation, and now you're just telling us that he's not even there.
There is a procedure where a change of manager does have to come back to, it's an application that has to come back to this board for approval before the new manager could take office.
In order to continue to serve.
Right.
Yeah, no, actually this Lovepreet Singh is the manager there, but I am taking care of the food and services right now. So I don't know when he come and.
Okay, well, I don't.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
real quick?
sure.
When was the last time Mr. Singh was in the restaurant here in Littleton?
It was in last month.
Okay, all right. We're gonna suggest do we need to open the hearing, or open and
I'd say
continue it?
continue it to a date certain.
All right, but I'm gonna, having read the notice, then I'm gonna continue the hearing to, the 23rd?
Sure.
Sure, and,
23rd on the 23rd?
and you can inform Mr. Singh that he can expect to hear
You start
from
at
Chief
6.
Bernard probably tomorrow. Keith, would be, Chief Bernard be the appropriate, or the department, the police department, or yourself?
And I'm gonna need to figure out what to do here, because.
Well, they might have a violation, in which case it might be a cease and desist.
That's one of the questions I have. Do they have the right to be selling any alcohol?
Well,
Without a manager that's licensed.
the police department has been duly informed. They can go out and make their own judgment on site, I would assume.
With the license?
Not right now.
No. I'm just gonna have him give you a business card if you have it, doesn't it?
Okay. Well, let's have one point of contact here, too. Let's try and, Chief, do you want to speak to this first?
I think it'd be appropriate if I have one of the alcohol agents do a follow-up tomorrow in regards to this whole issue, and hand deliver notice if we have to for the 23rd, rather than trying to figure out who the
Okay.
manager is or what time the manager is.
All right, and feel free to be in contact with counsel on that, too, then, rather than, be ringing up the cash register, giving advice to,
So will you be at the restaurant tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
You will be.
okay. All right. There's not any farther, I don't think we can
No,
go
I just
tonight.
think, so while you're there,
Tomorrow is my day off. I will be there on Wednesday.
on Wednesday.
Okay, it might be everybody's day off tomorrow, okay? That license might be taken off the wall and the building might be shut down, okay? Do you understand the seriousness of this?
Yes, sir. I will be there.
Didn't sound like it. Okay. Chief, I leave it to your discretion as to
Take care of it
how to
tomorrow.
proceed. Okay, board members, have any problem with that as a course of action?
I just want to,
Good for my person here.
Yeah.
Counselor, I'm looking at this legally. Do they have the right to be selling alcohol right now?
Well, I think we need to understand from the manager what his role is. And we may be adding revocation, license revocation here.
Okay. But
I would assume a lot of it turns on what the definition of the manager is.
the manager is the person on the license, and they're supposed to be an
It's the person
on-site.
on the license, but it's not necessarily the person who has to be there every day. So that's, I think
Yeah, it
that's what
is.
we need to
Well,
understand.
not every day, but.
No.
You'd expect him more than monthly.
More often than not.
Right. Not an absentee position.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You'll be hearing, I guess, probably as the next point of contact from Chief Bernard from the police department. Thank you.
And should this board vote to continue to a date certain, or just assume that we have to renotice it?
No, we're continued to.
I was suggesting we continue to the 23rd, so can we have a
Oh, yes,
a motion
please.
on that?
Yeah, thank you.
So moved. Good, so
Okay.
moved.
Motion's been made and seconded, then to continue this hearing to July 23rd. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. You actually have 7 minutes until your next hearing.
Well, we can get rid of some minutes in the legislative update, too.
Sure.
Keith?
Yeah, on the legislative update, I had put this on the agenda because the home rule petition that had been filed for firefighter Scott Holt, and filed in an original form known as House Bill 5404, was reported out in an amended form by the legislature's Public Service Committee. They reported it out favorably, but it was in an amended form which has a couple of substantive changes. And I've mentioned that because the town meeting vote that authorized the filing of the home rule petition allows the general court to make technical changes, but no substantive ones unless the Board of Selectmen approves the substance.
So we have the flexibility to operate as a board without going back to
Yeah,
town
you don't have to
meeting.
go to town meeting, but I think the situation that we're in right now, and I'm not gonna ask you for a vote tonight, but I'm just gonna give you an update, that based on the information that we have today, I think there are some concerns that we need to talk through with the Holts, to make sure that the last thing I wanna have happen is for this board to take a motion to accept the changes before we're sure that they're okay with the changes. We may find that we are very limited in what options we have, though, because the legislature, it will very likely approve the form in an amended form or not at all. So, and...
But, and this was in the letter that you circulated earlier today from Mrs. Holt, it sounds frustrating that the very language that's in question here was specifically...
That Middlesex County
County
proposed,
Retirement
that
Board
they proposed that we added. So, and I'd certainly like...
I know Tommy Gibson, if it helps at all to speak to somebody on there.
Yeah, and Steve Benuti had been in touch. They've been, Middlesex Retirement has been very, very helpful through this process. They did a lot of outreach. They did a lot of interaction with the Holts and with the town. But I regret that somewhere along the line, the language that was put out there with the expectation that it would simply be enacted by the legislature has in fact hit a couple of roadblocks. And I'd certainly want us to take the time to make sure that we all understand what that is. So with all due respect to the agenda on the 23rd of July, I think it may well be that we need to bring it back then. The bill, and I talked with Jeff Tucker in Rep. Sarah's office. I also got a call today from the council, for the legislative council for the committee, who said that he's willing to talk and answer questions. But it comes down to two things. One was that we had said there would be no requirement for a medical panel, medical review. The statute itself would constitute that. The language that the committee has come back with, mindful that if they, whatever they said they would view as a precedent that they would have to consider in other cases, they are recommended language that essentially required a medical review, not necessarily impanelment of that it could be a review of the record.
Right.
And I think that would be I think that is a satisfactory.
Well, you're in touch with the legislative council? I mean, that's helpful, because they write these bills, right?
Yeah,
So-
and the second point, which may be more problematic, is proposed exemptions from sections 91 and 91A of Chapter 32, which we put in there at Middlesex County's suggestion as a way, frankly, of allowing that if Scott retired and got his retirement, that there would not be all the restrictions in his post-retirement employment that there would otherwise be under the law, that we were seeking to have an exemption on the number of hours, for example, that he could work, so that even if he couldn't return to full-time duty as a firefighter, maybe he could return to full-time duty as an instructor at the fire academy someday. And it's that language that we're kind of coming up against right now. I'd like the ability to talk through that with Middlesex County, see where we are, but also to get back to the Holts. And I think because the situation we are in is that if the legislative committee doesn't go along with it, it doesn't pass. that it won't come to the floor for a vote, and it won't get through unless it somehow conforms with the concerns that the committee
And
has.
their calendar is such that if they don't act on it in the next month or so, it's
Well,
probably,
what we've been advised on that, though, is that the bill could come up in informal session, that it constitutionally, it doesn't require, a roll call vote, as some bills do, so that even if we can't work it all out by July 31st, when formal session ends, it could still be brought up in the informal session. But my initial hope in putting this on the agenda tonight was that, hey, we're okay with the
Right.
fix, and we should just vote to, have the board vote to approve it, so the legislature can get on and pass the bill. I think we have to there's a few more discussions we have to do before we can do that, and to be satisfied with the outcome.
are you content that the legislators' offices are doing what they can to help here?
Yeah, yes, their reaction, they've been very on top of responsive to the situation, and have reached out on numerous occasions.
All right.
So we'll continue to work.
If you need anything that we can help you on that, let us know. Otherwise, just keep us updated, and we'll
Okay,
hopefully have
sure. We will look to have a meeting, hopefully this week with Middlesex and perhaps with committee staff, and just see how we can resolve this, so.
Okay.
And then you've got
Several sets of minutes, which I'm delighted to see.
5 sets of minutes.
But now, yeah, a couple minutes. You don't think we can get through these, or? I did notice something just in the chronology, April 9th and 11th, okay, I get that, those are,
The 11th I had some issues with.
okay, well, we'll get to that in a moment. Did we jump right ahead to June 11th, were they not?
You already did the May ones.
We did,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Right, because we wanted to get the more recent ones.
Yes, okay,
cleared, I
that
think.
makes sense, all right.
Something like
Then why don't we see if we can get through, we'll do them, since especially there's some that might have some questions with them. Let's see, the April 9th minutes, any questions on that set? We'll do these individually. All right, Chuck, you said you had questions on the April 11th, or comment?
Correct. Well, it's written in third person, which I think that was kind of odd, but there's,
Do you want to hold out this set?
if we could, I've got, I've got a.
Okay, if you have a better way of presenting it, I just, if it's comprehensive, then, board object to that, if we just pull that.
Circle back with Diane.
Sure.
or-
The 11th.
Yeah, yeah, pull that one out, okay. We're not gonna revote anything, Matt. No.
So that was April 11th.
Right,
Okay.
June 4th, then, how about those minutes? Those look all right to me. And we also had the minutes for June 11th and the
And there
4th.
was one set that Diane Query mentioned that, and I'm I'll have to figure out which one it was, but when appointments were made to the Master Plan Implementation Committee,
Yeah,
that the chair was correct when you said 3-year terms.
oh, okay.
And my recollection was it was indefinite, and you were right. And so.
I don't even remember being right. so-
And so, well, we'll put it in the
Don't get
minutes,
used to it.
we'll put that in the minutes.
Okay.
But that, the consequence is that we wanted to clarify that the two
Oh, okay.
citizens, Megan Ford and Lyle Webster, would be appointed to terms expiring June 30, 2021, and that Chase, as the selectman's rep on the MPIC, would be a 2-year term, 6/30/20.
Do we need to revote those?
If you could accept the minutes with those amendments. that would
That's the way to do it.
What date is that?
That's on the 25th, right?
All right, 'cause June 4th, the only problem I have is with the, who was present, just the members. Mr. Glavy is correctly noted as the chair, Cindy as the vice, myself as the clerk. And
Oh,
so just,
Okay, so
Just-
we'll
just
have,
just to amend that to.
as amended,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. Okay, then with the exception of the April 11th minutes, we have a motion on the other 4 sets? As amended?
So moved. Do I have to line them up? Keith?
No, you can say
I just need a second.
Oh, second, sorry.
Motion made and seconded then to approve the 4 minutes for April 9th, June 4, 11, and 25, as amended. A motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right. With the 11th brought back to us. Keith, on those indefinite terms, I did get the follow-up that Diane had sent out letters, but what, somewhere lost in the shuffle was what are the list of the committees
Yeah.
that we were considering, just to make sure we were complete about that. She'd indicated in conversation with me that she'd sent it to me. I went back and checked my email, and I didn't see it anywhere.
Yeah, it was sent out the night of the last meeting.
That's what she said.
Yeah,
right?
and it was
Could
on
she-
it may have been on an Excel spreadsheet
All
too,
right.
so you may not have been able to open that
All
on.
right, I just want to make sure we're still not losing anybody. All right, now, given the time, folks okay with, we're ready to start the next liquor license violation hearing? All right, so that would be 7E in your packet. Again, this is a hearing liquor license violation, Common Foods Incorporated doing business as Littleton Sub Shop, 486 King Street. Greg Ellers, manager, all alcohol restaurant license. And I will call the hearing to order. You can come forward and have a seat. This hearing is to determine whether on May 11, 2018, the licensee sold or delivered an alcoholic beverage to a person less than 21 years of age in violation of Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 34. We've entered a copy of the public hearing notice into evidence. I asked the licensee to confirm that he or she received the notice. You received it again for the record. Your name is?
James.
James?
Hawkins, sorry.
Okay. Again, Greg is the manager of record.
Greg is on the list. Unfortunately, Greg's wife has a history of seizures, and she had one this afternoon, and I didn't know who to contact.
Okay.
I plan on being both me and him is here as well. I am the operating there mostly every day. He's also there all the time as well, but
Yeah.
I'm the one I'm the general manager. So as far as the alcohol and training and stuff like that, that falls on me. So I'm more prepared to deal with the situation.
All right.
This is the same situation.
It is.
I don't think it's
He-
exactly this.
I mean, Greg's there literally all the time.
yeah,
all the
yeah,
time.
we
You know,
don't-
but-
we
Yeah,
don't-
we don't-
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
not, he's not an
yeah.
absentee, he's very involved. It happened this
Yeah.
afternoon, we didn't know who we would call or
No,
contact, and
the
we didn't
part
want to
that's the
no-show.
same is that the manager's not present, and the manager is the person that's responsible really on
Violation
record.
boils up to the guy on the
Yeah.
license.
Yeah, but, we are family, and he is 100% knows I'm here, and I'm here to take care of everything, and he knows, and he is.
So I think the police can still present the testimony. You can still vote. I think it's incumbent on the board to weigh into the fact that the manager did not appear at the hearing. For whatever reason, you can put whatever weight on that you wish, but it should be entered into the record.
Or we could
Continue.
it as well, rather than getting part of the story on the record. Chief, did you have something you wanted to add?
I think, I know there's two different circumstances where we had
Right.
one restaurant that did have a manager here, not on site, and we know that James is always there. However, I think to follow procedure, we want the licensing agent that's on the bottom of that license here for the hearing. I think we should adhere to that.
Yeah. Board members, what do you think on that?
I definitely think it's different. I mean, any one of us that's gone in there, you see Greg running up and down the stairs, and, James, this guy, they are there all the time. There is a difference. I do like Indian food, it's not a...
I love masala, it's good
Yeah,
food.
But I do think that we create a slippery slope if we start not adhering to the licensee being present for this type of
Yeah,
hearing.
that's, like I said, it was a family emergency, and Greg
Right.
does,
Very
but I don't
empathetic.
want this would have a bad impression, this wasn't important enough for Greg to show up.
No,
You
no.
know 100% that this is a big deal.
Right.
I would just rather not put ourselves in a bad position down the road. Let's dot the i's, cross the t's, continue it, and
Yeah.
give everyone an opportunity
Yeah.
to speak.
That'd be my, the key part that is the same is that the manager's not present. The circumstances seem to be very different
Because
in
I'm
both
not on the
cases.
license,
Yeah, and so, yes, you're not the person we can hold responsible, you know?
Understandable.
And so I guess my suggestion would be, unless there's objection from the board, is that and I apologize for the department, that you'll be coming back on the 23rd anyways, so I guess I would suggest that we move this to move this to the 23rd. Keith, is that, all right, can I have a motion that you understand you can convey that,
Oh,
obviously?
absolutely, and I'm sorry for the
Greg?
inconvenience for everyone, because we knew about this and we were prepared for it, and it
I
happened.
know, in
For
fact,
people to
I
have to come
saw
out-
Greg a couple of weeks ago, and he made notice that he made me aware that he knew that it was coming up, so
We do, I just want to,
Yeah.
apologize for being let it come out and stuff like that for this.
If I guess, just a quick question to council. Is there any precedent where there is the ability to have more than one name on a license, or is it strictly,
No, I think it's one.
yeah, period?
Is it only one? Okay. I was actually gonna ask that as well, just because,
Yep.
obviously Greg's there a lot, but for one person to be there all the time is obviously impossible, so.
That's not the expectation.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was a way of
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah,
can
I
add
mean-
more than one. Yeah, I mean,
No secrets revealed here. We know the management operation there, some of us are in there a bunch, but it doesn't change the,
Yeah, no,
our legal
No,
responsibility.
understandable, completely.
Okay, then a motion then?
Motion
sorry.
to continue.
To continue?
Do you know how to get this?
23rd of July. At what time?
We don't even
We didn't
have
establish a
a
time,
date.
So motion made.
Okay, motion made and,
Second.
motion's made and seconded then to continue the hearing to July 23rd, and we hope all's well on the home front, and look forward to seeing Greg back here on the 23rd.
All right, thank you guys very much.
Right.
Sorry again.
Thank you. Huh? Oh, did I
Yeah,
not
you
do
want to
that?
vote on it, yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Now, how about a motion to adjourn? Anybody want one of those?
Incorporated.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Well, the ayes have it.
Neither.
Just three of us.